Chapter 12:25. Divine King Qifeng of the nine-headed bird race had a gloomy expression. A flame was burning in his chest. He had used his most powerful method to seal this place, but he had still failed. Chowda had broken through right in front of him. How could he not be shocked? His face quickly turned scarlet red, as if he was dyed in a layer of blood. His hair fluttered without any wind. He revealed his killing intent. Earlier, he had said that with him here, Chowda could forget about it. He had no fate with the substance of creation and would thus be kicked out. But now, Chowda's fierce breakthrough was equivalent to a slap to his face. His cold warning had become empty words. Qifeng felt his face burning. It was a bit feverish and uncomfortable. In particular, Divine King Mi Hong was still laughing loudly. Two golden bolts of lightning shot out from his eyes. He was clearly watching Qifeng make a fool of himself and mocking him mercilessly. Living in this world, no matter who you are, don't be too arrogant. So what if you're a divine king? What's the result? Hurry up and swallow your own words. Lick back the saliva you spit out. You domineeringly threatened others, but what's the result? He broke through right in front of you, and it's a super breakthrough at that. His realm is still rising and resonating with the great Tao. Is he going to achieve the most powerful divine physique in history? The monkey's elder brother, Mi Hong, was quite impolite. He mocked Qifeng and laughed coldly, making him feel too ashamed to show his face. Qifeng's eyes were cold and exceptionally angry. He felt as if he had been slapped in the face. They said they were going to restrain Chowda and make him lose his opportunity, but this senior advanced by leaps and bounds and successfully broke through. How is this possible? The three-headed divine dragon, Yun Tua, also muttered. He clenched his fists and stared at Chowda, who was surrounded by them, watching him comprehend the Tao. Jean Lin's beautiful eyes widened. She was speechless, and even her heart was trembling slightly. The other party actually broke through another level in this kind of situation. One had to know that the Tao fusion herb's strongest effect was to increase a creature's potential, allowing them to accumulate and raise the ceiling of their life. It wasn't a fierce medicine for breaking through and increasing one's realm. It was difficult for one's strength to increase explosively on the spot. It was more like a gentle medicine that, with the passage of time, would gradually reveal its heaven-defying effects. It would affect one's entire life and raise one's upper limit. However, Chowda directly jumped and broke through. Jean Lin was shaken. Her sparkling white face was full of shock. She found this hard to believe and was unwilling to accept this. Jean Lai was also dumbfounded. Then, he cursed inwardly. There were so many of them, including the Divine King, yet they were unable to restrain Chowda even after working together? Damn Chowda, you can also break through like this? Heavens, you really are immoral. Chowda, Chowwuda. Jean Lai wanted to curse out loud, feeling that there was no justice in this world. All of them felt as if they had been slapped in the face. Their faces were burning with pain, and it was hard for them to accept this fact. Even heavenly venerable Li Yen, who was on good terms with the undying bird race, was speechless. However, he was extremely disgusted in his heart. He was already very partial to Qifeng and the others, allowing them to attack and disturb Chowda's Tao comprehension. In the end, they still couldn't stop him, allowing that youth to rise up against the odds. At this moment, an existence like him, an ancient evolved being that achieved an empyrean sovereign body, was extremely sharp. He sensed traces of abnormalities. He felt that Chowda's improvement wasn't simple. It was a bit like the strongest physique, stepping onto the legendary path that was difficult to walk. At this moment, Qifeng didn't pay attention to them. He was immersed in the peaceful state of his body's comprehensive evolution. He bathed in the divine rain of light. This kind of experience was really too wonderful. He was comfortably warm from head to toe, and his vitality was surging. It was as if he was being nurtured by the Mother of Heaven and Earth, and had obtained a new life. He broke through the golden body domain and became a quasi-saint. Moreover, his cultivation was still growing madly and hadn't stopped. Now, he couldn't care less about the problem of his realm. Instead, he was experiencing the benefits he had obtained from this body. There were fine patterns flickering in all of his cells. That was the Tao Fusion herb's essence displaying its effects. It was being crushed by the small grinding stone and extracted into the origin runes. This kind of origin law fragment was densely covered in his flesh and blood. It was equivalent to a refinement of his blood and soul as runes flowed throughout his body. The benefits were too astonishing. Chu Feng's corporeal body was exceptionally strong, and his spirit was also full of vigor. As it fused with his flesh and blood, there was a kind of feeling as if he was branded at the center of the universe. It was as if he could control everything in the world. He was undergoing the baptism of the Yang realm's origin. He was obtaining a new life from head to toe. When he was in the lesser netherworld, he had achieved the quasi-saint realm, but it couldn't be compared to what he was now. The disparity was too great, and he had never experienced this before. He felt that his current corporeal body was like divine gold and his spirit was like a divine rainbow. No matter which race he encountered, as long as the difference in realm wasn't too great, he could slaughter them. Chu Feng was convinced that he had stepped onto the path of the strongest. He compared it in his heart and verified it with the contents of the letter written by Empyrean Rockfox's master. Once again, he confirmed that this was the state of the strongest body. His corporeal body was flawless. After the great circle of the invincible golden body, he had directly transcended mortality and entered sainthood. Now, Chu Feng's body was sparkling and translucent like jade. Moreover, it was emitting a fragrance. There seemed to be boundless power within his body as he raised his hand. He felt that his fist's seal could penetrate the heavens and that there was nothing he couldn't do. Chu Feng was alert and calmed himself down. At this moment, he felt that he was becoming more and more in tune with the entire world. The world in his eyes seemed to have become much brighter, and what he saw in his heart was somewhat different. He saw traces of order shadows gliding across the horizon. Those were the wandering paths of the Yang realm's great Tao left behind millions of years ago. Chu Feng was shocked. If he carefully captured them like this, he would constantly be enlightened. How could his final achievements be bad? This is the path of the strongest. It might be very difficult along the way, and there will be many hardships and dangers, and even the road ahead will be cut off. However, if I use my body as a bridge and cross over at different stages, I will be able to suppress all enemies in the end. Chu Feng's heart trembled. This path of the strongest was indeed terrifying. It was too shocking. His current corporeal body and spirit had reached the strongest state in this domain. After stepping onto this path, the world he saw was completely different. He could see through traces of the Tao's path. If this continued, he would naturally rise and comprehend even more astonishing things. Although this path is incomplete and is considered difficult to walk to the end, I believe that I can continue and walk through it. When that time came, Chu Feng believed that he would finally be able to transcend. Even if he jumped out of the Yang realm and encountered the player behind the reincarnation path, he would still be able to fight. Even if he drew out the creatures of the Yang realm, he would still have the confidence to face them calmly. Even if one day the legend became a reality and he encountered creatures from other nodes and branches of evolution, he would still be able to compete confidently and kill his way to the peak. At this moment, Chu Feng blossomed with auspicious light as if he was drowned in a mass of dazzling light. He was still absorbing the essence of the Tao Fusion grass. A moment later, several more fruits flew over and landed in his mouth. Ka-cha sounds rang out as he directly chewed on them. The fruits disappeared into his mouth. In reality, they were directly absorbed by his corporeal body and plundered by the small grinding stone to refine the origin runes. It was easy to absorb and comprehend. He was consolidating and at the same time pushing himself to evolve to a higher realm. At this moment, Chu Feng was very sacred from head to toe. He came into contact with the Tao Law fragments, and that ancient and primitive aura permeated his entire body. In an instant, he had an illusion as if he had arrived before the heavens were split open and witnessed the secrets of origin. He had captured the vague traces of the primitive Great Tao. He was absorbing, comprehending, and improving himself. Damn it, he's still evolving. The three-headed divine dragon Yun Tuo was shocked and angry. At the same time, a chill rose in his heart and he felt somewhat uneasy. If he allowed Chowda to rise rapidly, he would definitely be a threat to him in the future. The others were also shaken. They had never seen such a freak. This Chowda was constantly improving and hadn't stopped. After breaking through to the Golden Realm, he should be at the elementary stage of the Quasi-Saint realm. But now, Chowda had reached the intermediate stage in a short time and then rushed to the late stage. This was too fast. Chu Feng himself could feel how terrifying he was. He had experienced the evolution of the Quasi-Saint level in the past. Now that he had returned and made a comparison, he could roughly estimate how extraordinary he was now. In truth, he really wanted to find someone to fight and test his quality. Or to be more precise, he wanted to find a group of people to fight and kill a group of experts. Only then would he be able to demonstrate how terrifying he was on the path to becoming the strongest. Chu Feng was very quiet. His body was glowing like raging flames, as if he was burning. He was still in the process of harvesting the Dao-fusing grass as he continued to grow stronger. At this moment, he had already reached the late stage of the Quasi-Saint level. If this continued, he would definitely reach the Great Circle of Perfection or even break through? This was somewhat abnormal. He was very worried that a flaw would be left behind. He was worried that the path to becoming a quasi-saint wouldn't be stable enough and would leave a flaw in the strongest physique. He felt that it was necessary to first slow down and temporarily stop himself. He had to examine himself and check if there were any flaws so that the path to the strongest evolution could be maintained perfectly. But he also didn't want to waste the opportunity before him. Didn't he see that divine King Qi Feng's eyes were red? He wanted nothing more than to kill him, because he was madly plundering the essence of the Daofuse grass at this moment, and it even affected God King Qi Feng who was close by. Not to mention surrounding Chowda, even a portion of the materials of fortune that Qi Feng himself required was seized away. You deserve to die. Qi Feng was awe-inspiring. He really wanted nothing more than to slap him to death and turn him into a bloody mist. In the vicinity, the others also had ugly expressions. They were all affected. Chowda had gone crazy. There were vortexes outside his body, and golden light blossomed amidst the gray clouds as he plundered their opportunities. Heh! Chu Feng revealed a cold smile, feeling increasingly satisfied. He couldn't stop. Wouldn't it be foolish to give up the creation substance in front of him to the enemy? Although I need to stop and figure out if there are any deviations in the path to the strongest, I still have other Tao fruits to carry the creation substance. Chu Feng arrived at the divine monarch Tao fruit sealed in the small grinding stone. He had cultivated it in the lesser Yin realm. After coming to the Yang realm, he deeply felt that it was lacking and had too many flaws. Of course, the most serious problem was that once the divine monarch Tao fruit in the lesser Yin realm was exposed, he would be struck by lightning. Moreover, it would be the strongest heavenly tribulation in history. Now, he felt that he could merge the essence of the Dao-fusing grass he had plundered into the Tao fruit in the lesser Yin realm to refine this divine monarch core. Once he thought of it, Chu Feng didn't hesitate in the slightest. He was still fighting for opportunities and plundering the creation substance, but he was secretly injecting them into the Tao fruit of his previous life. Chapter 12:26. The divine king core from his previous life was suppressed between the small grinding stone and the stone jar. It was very convenient to use it now, and he didn't need to worry about being discovered. Both the gray grinding stone and the 3-inch tall stone jar were very special and could conceal the secrets of heaven. Chu Feng was excited as he continued to compete with the others for the fortune. The runes and profoundness from the Dao-fusing herb on the altar entered the divine king core like water ripples. Chu Feng felt a sense of satisfaction and joy as he watched these origin runes and Dao law fragments from the Yang realm being injected into the Dao fruit from his previous life. One could guess that the divine king core could change the current situation and gradually perfect the once incomplete Dao fruit. He hoped that the divine king core could be refined and baptized to its strongest state in the end. If that was the case, he would be able to recover his previous life's Dao position. His strength would soar and he would be able to look down on the geniuses of the various races. Of course, the most important thing was to accumulate and subtly raise his ceiling. The greatest use of the Dao-fusing herb wasn't to baptize the body or improve the Dao fruit. It wasn't a potent medicine but a subtle increase in one's foundation. Chu Feng's mind was peaceful as he bathed in the light rain. He was very relaxed. Whether he absorbed it or injected it into the divine king core, it was all the same. These materials of fortune would help him. It was like a piece of meat in the pot that couldn't run away. He felt that this was also good. He was too eye-catching and actually broke through at the last moment. Moreover, he was going to improve by leaps and bounds. This was too shocking. If he jumped in front of everyone and evolved from a quasi-saint to a saint, it would probably cause a huge uproar. At that time, not to mention others, even the ancestor of the 6-eared macaque race might capture him and dissect him to slowly study him. There was no need to mention the protector of this place. That celestial venerable of the 9-headed bird race might immediately attack him. Others were trembling with fear as they absorbed the foundation and couldn't break through on the spot. Only he was too conspicuous. If he broke through again and again, he would definitely receive extra attention. One must keep a low profile. Chu Feng sighed. Moreover, he had said it out loud. In the end, the people around him wanted to vomit blood and bury him with their spittle. Everyone was of the opinion that he was pretending to be 13, looting again and again. Low-key my **s. The group of people even had the urge to skin him alive. He was too hated. Chu Feng didn't pay them any attention. The vortices around him became densely packed, becoming more and more vigorous as they fought over natural luck. At this moment, he felt the essence continuously rush into his body, cleansing his divine King Dao fruit. It was as if he was shrouded by a great sun, dazzling and dazzling. Then, a group of people cursed. They truly couldn't take it anymore, and all of the evolvers close to him wanted to curse out loud. Out of 10 strands of natural luck, at least 8 strands were seized by Chowda. How could they still talk about blocking Chowda? Instead, they were being tormented. All creatures that sat next to him felt regret. They really shouldn't have sat at his side. Right now, it was simply a nightmare, suffering retribution. Chu Feng closed his eyes, feeling at ease as he robbed them. At this moment, Jean Lin's face was pale, and she was about to cry. This was a rare opportunity, yet it was actually going to be interrupted by someone? In the distance, the monkey, Peng Wanli, Mi Qing, and the others were also stunned. They were stupefied. They all wanted to say that Chowda was truly a freak and couldn't be judged with common sense. He was just one person, yet he could affect a group of people and reverse rob them. This made those enemies' eyes turn red, and they were about to go crazy. Chowda, do you still have any humanity left? Even if you had the slightest bit of sympathy, you wouldn't take things to the extreme like this. You're going too far. Can't you see that Jean Lin is about to cry? The 3-headed divine dragon Yun Tua was extremely shameless. He could even say such words without any psychological burden. Even Chu Feng was stunned. He wanted to spit at Yun Tuo's face. This group of people surrounded and obstructed him, ruining his opportunity, wanting him to return empty-handed. This was cutting off his future path, no different from killing his parents. Now, these people went for wool and came home shorn, yet they still had the face to blame him? Chowda, as an evolver, you should be magnanimous. Do you want to make the entire world your enemy by killing them all? Another person spoke, completely anxious. He was incomparably fretful after being robbed like this. Magnanimous your grandpa. Chu Feng was displeased, turning into a big spitfire again. Then, he targeted the three-headed divine dragon Yun Tuo, clearly telling him that if he were to crush him this time, he could forget about obtaining a strand of natural luck. Chu Feng then looked at the nine-headed bird race's divine king Chi Feng, saying, "Didn't you want to seal me up, to cut off my future, to obstruct my path of evolution, to make me return empty-handed and have no fate with the Dao fusion grass? Ah Pei, try using the net of order to suppress me again," he challenged, looking down on Chi Feng. Chi Feng's face alternated between green and white. He truly couldn't take it anymore. He felt a wave of humiliation, and even his face was boiling hot. Then, his expression became ashen, and he really wanted to kill Chowda. This was exposing his shortcomings, provoking him. He, a glorious divine king, couldn't do anything to a youth. Even the two divine kings at Chi Feng's side had ugly expressions, turning a bit green. Not long ago, they had also taken action to help Chi Feng, but in the end, they still couldn't deal with Chowda. And now, even these two were affected. Even though they were divine kings, they still lost a bit of natural luck, seized by Chowda. Divine king experts wanted to seal a golden body cultivator to death, yet they ended in failure and were instead ridiculed. This made them lose all face, and their hearts were full of gloominess. The most serious thing was that the natural luck belonging to divine kings was still decreasing, being plundered by Chowda. This was intolerable, because this was related to their future. After Chu Feng finished speaking, he closed his eyes again, no longer paying them any attention. He looted in peace. He sat cross-legged on a praying mat, his hands forming the Buddhist race's magical imprint. He was like a Buddha holding a flower. His eyes were closed, yet there was a smile on his face. Divine light erupted around him, curling around him. "Do you want to anger me to death?" someone shouted. Chowda was risking his life to loot them, seizing all types of natural luck, yet he still dared to smile there. Was he mocking them all? This is the charm of the Tao race, the style of smiling while holding a flower. Do you understand? Chu Feng looked down on Xiao Yao. Xiao Yao couldn't stand it. This was the attitude of those baldies, all right? Don't randomly accuse me. Divine King Xiao Shiyun also rolled her eyes. Her fair and sparkling face was covered in black lines. No matter how she looked at him, Chowda didn't seem like a good person. Following that, Chu Feng calmed his heart and mind. He was in a transcendent state, plucking flowers and laughing as he looted the nearby enemies. This kind of attitude caused Jean Lai, the Kuan dragon, and the others to suffer serious injuries. They really wanted to jump up and launch an attack, giving him a fatal blow. However, a strand of the aura of an Empyrean slid past, alerting even the divine kings. There were experts protecting the order of this place. Not long after, people discovered that there were fine and incomplete order chains seeping out from Chowda's body. They turned into multicolored light and entered the void. Some people were furious, and the veins on their foreheads were throbbing. They believed that Chowda had looted too much of the essence of the Dao-fusing grass. Now, his body was saturated and could no longer accommodate too many creation substances. At this time, he had absorbed too much of the Yang realm's source energy, causing it to dissipate. Someone opened his mouth and coughed up blood. His eyes were red because he hadn't obtained much creation substances until now. Chu Feng ignored him. He looked into the small grinding stone and examined himself. He clearly knew what had happened, and his heart was very excited. After obtaining those materials of fortune, his godly monarch core was baptized and tempered 1,000 times. Some of the so-called incomplete and erroneous law fragments were crushed out. He was reconstructing the divine king's Tao fruit. Those multicolored light, those broken order chains, and so on were all incomplete world imprints inscribed in the little Een realm. They weren't perfect enough, so they were now being replaced and gradually perfected. Therefore, some runes were expelled. For a moment, Chu Feng felt refreshed and full of energy. Now, his smiling posture was more and more transcendent. This made the nine-headed divine king of the bird race, Chi Feng, so angry that his face flushed and he almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. From their point of view, this was naked mockery. Chowda was incomparably satisfied with wasting creation substances. He was laughing and looking down on them. Rumble. Not long after, apart from the fruit, even one of the leaves of the Tao-fusing grass broke off and flew toward Chu Feng. It was broken down by the countless vortexes outside his body and then absorbed into his body. When they saw this scene, Chi Feng and the other two divine kings wanted to vomit blood. The entire Tao-fusing grass had a total of 9 leaves, and there were 9 fruits on each leaf. Now, he had directly destroyed one of them. Earlier, only a small piece of one of the leaves broke off and flew toward Chowda. Now it was almost uprooted. The part of the Tao-fusing grass that was facing Chu Feng was badly damaged, as if it had been bitten by a dog. Chi Feng's face twitched. He really couldn't stand it anymore. He raised his hand and was about to kill Chowda with a palm strike and beat him into a pile of meat paste. However, a wisp of pressure secretly descended and warned him that if he dared to make a move, he would suffer the most severe punishment. "I can't stand it any more," someone shouted. His heart was bleeding. What had they come here for? To obtain creation substances and expand one's upper limit was related to the ultimate achievement of one's life. Now, this path had been cut off by someone. Not long ago, they were still smiling faintly and targeting Chowda so that he wouldn't be able to obtain anything. In the end, the situation was reversed. In order to obtain this quota, the old ancestors of the various races didn't hesitate to shed all pretense of cordiality and push their own descendants onto the list. Now, all of this had been destroyed with a single thought. All the pores on Chu Feng's body relaxed. His spirit and physical body seemed to have returned to their mother's womb and were being reborn. They received the nourishment of innate substances and were constantly being purified, becoming stronger and stronger. The key was the accumulation of potential and a lifetime's foundation. It was constantly accumulating. After an unknown amount of time, when he opened his eyes, he discovered that there were still 3.5 leaves left on the Tao-fusing grass that were still glowing. And around him, there was only emptiness. Not to mention the others, even the divine kings of the 9-headed bird race had run away to squeeze space with others and fight for territory. A group of people had actually fled. The losses were disastrous. Of course, even if they stood up with ashen faces and searched for other praying mats, it would still be rather difficult. This was because there weren't many seats left in other places. The old heavenly deity secretly warned that the seats had long been established and the order was already set. They wouldn't allow the strong to bully the weak here. Of course, if you felt that you could challenge the strong and fight divine kings at the saint level, then that wasn't a problem. You could just go and fight for it. This made the Kuan dragon, Jin Lai Yuntua, and the others want to curse out loud. Even in this place of Tao comprehension, they still had to strictly abide by the rules and couldn't be broken. After Chu Feng opened his eyes, they flickered with radiance. He wanted to move around a bit. When he saw his opponents huddled together, he laughed maliciously and directly got up. Boom! He aimed a bolt of lightning that streaked past the ear of that 9-headed bird race divine king. This was true lightning, and it made Chi Feng, who was in the midst of comprehending the Tao, feel his chi and blood churn. He almost fell to the ground, and blood flowed from his mouth and nose. He suddenly opened his eyes, incomparably furious. He was at a crucial moment of Tao comprehension, but someone had actually disturbed him. Sorry, just now I had a feeling and comprehended the profound meaning of thunder. I accidentally caused too much of a commotion. Chu Feng smiled. Chi Feng really wanted to kill someone. How dare he do this? However, the old heavenly deity secretly warned him not to be impudent and not to attack. Divine King Mi Hong laughed loudly and said, "Weren't you disturbing others before? Karma really comes quickly. You're allowed to disturb others, but can't others counterattack? Don't be a sore loser." Divine King Li Jiuxiao also spoke. Chi Feng was furious, but in the end, he endured it. He closed his eyes and began to comprehend Tao again. After a while, Chu Feng stood up. Then, without a sound, he made his move decisively. He lifted the Wolf Fang club and smashed it down. He already knew that he had to abide by the camp's rules here. He could challenge those of a higher realm, but he couldn't bully the weak. This made things easier. He chose his target very carefully. Without saying anything, he first smashed the head of the Kuan dragon, who was at a critical moment of comprehending the laws of heaven and earth. Bang! The Kuan dragon's vision darkened, and he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. He felt as if his head wasn't his own anymore. What the F***ck was going on? He felt that he was finished. Not to mention the physical injuries, just the great Tao injuries alone were unbearable. Bang! At this moment, the three-headed divine dragon Yun Tuo, who was right next to him, also felt his vision darkening. His head was ringing and he couldn't stand it anymore. Someone was actually making a move under such circumstances? The Kuan dragon and Yun Tuo felt like they were going crazy. Chapter 12:27. You're awake. When Chu Feng saw Yun Tuo open his eyes, the mace in his hand immediately danced like a windmill. He swung it endlessly and smashed it without stopping. Bang! 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 Yun Tuo was stupefied. Only then did he focus a little. In the end, intense pain surged over like a tide. His vision turned black, and he simply couldn't stand it. In just a split second, he suffered at least 38 blows. A total of 38 blows from the mace all landed on his head. Even a god couldn't stand it. This time, his skull was split into pieces. He was in so much pain that he was going crazy. One had to know that that was a heavy weapon, the mace. It was made of a special rare metal and was measured in units of tens of thousands of kilograms. Being swung around and smashed violently like this was simply like a metal mountain bombarding him. Even a dragon couldn't bear it at all. His head was cracked, and his soul light was severely damaged. The black light of the mace corroded him immediately. One had to know that the mace was a weapon of the six-eared macaque race. It was an important treasure. Otherwise, how could it be worthy of the monkey Mi Tian? It could severely injure a person's physical body and even kill their soul light. Now Yun Tuo was almost beaten to death. Roar! At the crucial moment, a terrifying light beam emitted from Yun Tuo's shoulders. Both sides of his shoulders protruded, and there were heads drilling out, about to pop out. Boom! Chu Feng didn't say anything else. He changed his target just like that and directly dealt a fatal blow. There was nothing to hesitate about now. If he couldn't take down Yun Tuo immediately, then he would be in trouble. After all, this was a god and his realm level was right there. Poor Yun Tuo. Although he was known as a three-headed divine dragon, he only used one as the main head. The other two heads were used to store the soul light of the clones, and they were far inferior to the main head. Moreover, the soul light was connected. When the main head was injured just now, the soul light of the two clones was actually severely damaged as well. Their resistance now wasn't as strong. Chu Feng had struck 58 times in one go, and the two skulls had long since been smashed to pieces. Fortunately, one of the heads wasn't completely shattered and could still be pieced together. If there was great medicine, it could still be healed. However, as a three-headed divine dragon, a top-notch powerhouse among the gods who had the qualifications to come here, it was really too miserable for him to end up like this. If this got out, it would be a stain on his life. After all, he was now crippled by a second saint. No one had expected that Chowda would be so ferocious, taking down Yuntua just like that. Moreover, he didn't make a single sound, immediately launching a sneak attack. He was too ruthless. Chowda Yuntua was filled with hatred and was about to faint. Moreover, he carried boundless resentment, because he reckoned that he might have encountered a huge problem. Even though he wasn't dead yet, the consequences of being interrupted while comprehending the Tao were too severe. "That's right, it's me, it's still me," Chu Feng shouted in a timely manner. F***ck. At the last moment, Yun Tuo's head that could still be considered to be intact directly rolled back his eyes, and he was angered to the point of fainting. Meanwhile, within his body, all types of divine chains of order moved about chaotically, corroding his foundation and wearing away at his foundation. Sure enough, the most serious problem occurred. During this process, it was not that no one wanted to interfere. In reality, the God King of the nine-headed bird race, Qi Feng, had stood up a long time ago, but he was blocked by Mi Hong. The two God Kings beside Qi Feng also stood up, wanting to target him. Li Jiuxiao snorted coldly, looking down on them. His long hair fluttered even though there was no wind, causing the two God Kings to be fearful and not dare to act rashly. Although these two were also well-known figures among the God Kings, they were still a little lacking compared to Li Jiuxiao. Li Jiuxiao was currently one of the strongest God Kings in the world. In recent years, the God Kings ranked ahead of him had either become celestial venerables or passed away in meditation. His accumulation was deeper and more terrifying, and he was undefeatable at this level. Therefore, when Chu Feng smashed fiercely there, Yun Tua could only endure it, and no one could step forward. Phew! Chu Feng let out a long breath. Defeating Yun Tua was much more satisfying, as the other party had completely lost his ability to fight. In this place, he fought the strong as the weak, and it was not against the rules at all to challenge the strong. However, if he was suppressed by the strong, he could not blame others. Even if he was killed, he could only blame it on his bad luck. After all, he was the one who initiated this battle. It was very risky for Chu Feng to choose Yun Tua. If he did not succeed, he would be in danger. However, he did not completely kill Yun Tua. He did not go one step further, as that would be as bad as falling short. He could challenge him, but if he killed him, he would probably anger the celestial venerables in the dark. Chowda! At this time, the Koan dragon roared angrily. He was the first to be hit and his head was dizzy. The top of his head was split open, and he almost collapsed to the ground. In his body, all kinds of rule fragments were running amok, and he almost went berserk. After adjusting his breathing with difficulty, his body's condition was still terrible, but he managed to temporarily suppress it. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was that Yun Tua was finished. He was attacked by Chowda, and the dignified god was covered in blood. His head was not intact, and he was lying on the praying mat. The Koan dragon's eyes were cold, and he was about to rush up and activate the long blade in his hand to fight Chowda to the death. "It's me." Chu Feng admitted it openly. This was even more infuriating, and it made the Koan dragon burn with rage. This was the same as pissing on your head, and in the end, he still proudly took credit and said, "That's right, it's me who did it. It's just as vile." The long blade in the Koan dragon's hand was unsheathed, and he was about to kill Chu Feng. Suddenly, it was like a white waterfall, and it was like the Milky Way pouring down from the 9 heavens. It bloomed, and it reflected the astonished expressions of everyone here. This blade was too stunning. However, Chu Feng was really not afraid. He was already in the late stage of quasi-saint, and after the tempering just now, his confidence had skyrocketed because he was walking the path of the strongest. He was confident that he could overcome the stronger and go against the trend. Therefore, when he was choosing his target just now, the first one he chose was the Kuan dragon. This was because he had confidence in his heart, and he wasn't afraid of the Kuan dragon if they were to really fight a decisive battle. It was just that when he saw the three-headed divine dragon, Yun Tuo, was right next to the Kuan dragon and was the closest to him, so Chu Feng couldn't help but want to use underhanded means to get rid of this god that was always targeting him. Therefore, in the end, after he gave the Kuan dragon a blow, he quickly and decisively changed his target and wholeheartedly attacked Yun Tuo. If Yun Tuo knew what he was thinking, he would probably vomit blood from anger. Chu Feng erupted and fought with the Kuan dragon. Endless golden light gushed out from his mouth. That was sword chi, and that was his martial will. He wanted to resist the Kuan dragon. Of course, during this process, he kept on plundering the substance of creation, and the vortex on the surface of his body didn't disappear at all. Even when he was wielding the mace and smashing Yun Tuo continuously, he didn't stop absorbing the essence of the Dao fusion grass. This was the proper business, and he couldn't waste this opportunity. Therefore, this also made people especially displeased. You've already gone to harm people, and you've gone to find someone to use underhanded means, yet you're still so greedy and insatiable. Bang! Amidst the violent collision, the blade light suddenly vanished. The Kuan dragon coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, and his entire body spasmed. His body was like a sieve, and he directly fell head first to the ground. At the critical moment, the divine chains of order within his body ran amok, and the fragments of laws surged, almost causing his body to be torn apart and cause him to suffer from chi deviation. With a clang, the Kuan dragon's blade fell to the ground, and all the blade light naturally vanished. The dazzling golden light that Chu Feng spat out from his mouth was like a tidal wave of energy, and it slammed onto the Kuan dragon's body just like that, causing his body to be blasted flying. One had to know that this contained Chu Feng's martial will, and it was too terrifying. If it was really used against someone at the same cultivation level, it would be invincible. Even the Kuan dragon, who was known as the #1 saint in Harmony Prefecture's camp, couldn't bear it anymore. After all, something had happened to his body, and his defenses had collapsed. At this moment, the Kuan dragon was like a ragged bag that was covered in cracks after being struck by the dazzling golden light from Chu Feng's mouth. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, and his entire body was about to explode. Everyone was dumbfounded. The Kuan dragon had been defeated? Hadn't the Kuan dragon stood up just now, and with the #1 saint's blade in his hand, he had displayed shocking killing intent. That kind of blade light had stunned everyone, so how could he have been defeated so suddenly? Naturally, many people saw the problem and knew that the divine chains of order within the Kuan dragon's body were in chaos. However, there were also some people who didn't understand the situation. They were all shocked and dumbfounded, thinking that Chowda had defeated the Kuan dragon with a single attack. The #1 saint, the Kuan dragon, has been defeated by Chowda. Heavens, what did I just see? The Kuan dragon's blade chi is peerless and invincible, but he was actually overturned by Chowda in a single exchange. Is this a change of dynasties and a reshaping of the saint rankings? Even if Chowda has advanced, he's only at the quasi-saint realm. How could he seriously injure the Kuan dragon with a single attack? Some people were in an uproar, especially those at the Golden Body realm, quasi-saint realm, and the saint realm. They were all dumbfounded. Chu Feng's attack was too shocking for them. Even the monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao were speechless. They felt that this sworn brother of theirs was about to ascend to the heavens and directly overturn the Kuan dragon? Mi Qing's large eyes flickered with resplendent light. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile as he clapped his hands and cheered. Jean Lai grinned. He didn't know what he was feeling in his heart. At first, he was very disdainful when he saw Chowda shamelessly overturn Yun Tua. But soon after, he saw Chowda display his might and overturn the Kuan dragon with a mouthful of golden light. This moved him and his heart trembled. Jean Lin also felt complicated. This enemy, this bastard who had offended her, sat on her body, and boasted shamelessly that he would take care of her, was actually so powerful? Even the Kuan dragon had been defeated in a single move. She had always had a good impression of the Kuan dragon because she liked experts and revered her father's generation. Naturally, the Tao companion she was looking for was also an invincible evolver. But now, the number 1 saint, the Kuan dragon, had been sent flying by Chu Feng with a single move and was bleeding from all 7 apertures. Who can fight me? Chu Feng muttered to himself. It wasn't that everyone couldn't see through it. Mi Hong, Ji Kaixin, Li Jiuxiao, the divine king of the 9-headed bird race, Qi Feng, and the others all understood what was going on. Xiao Yao's little aunt, Xiao Shiyun, was even curling her lips. She felt that this Chowda was too shameless. Wasn't this because he had attacked in advance? And now, he actually had the nerve to look down on the world and speak such arrogant words. However, there was also a group of people who didn't know. At this moment, they were naturally shaken and couldn't help but be in an uproar. Chowda is too powerful. He only spat out a beam of golden light from his mouth and overturned the Kuan dragon. Is this because he's too powerful, or is the Kuan dragon too famous? No one can deny that Chowda has risen. Even a few divine kings couldn't stop his momentum. Some people are like comets flying across the sky, like the blazing sun hanging in the sky. They are destined to shine brilliantly for life and are unstoppable. A group of people sighed and talked about Chowda's bravery. Moreover, some people who were paying attention to this place directly spread the news. At this time, Chu Feng walked forward in large strides. With a bang, he kicked the Kuan dragon, whose body had cracked open, into the air and said, "You're too weak. Although I don't want to say you're useless, you really can't withstand a single blow." At this moment, the Kuan dragon had just woken up. After all, he was the number 1 saint. Even if there was a major problem with his body, his powerful will still awakened. But when he heard such words and saw Chowda kick him, the Kuan dragon couldn't take it anymore. He was so angry that he coughed up blood and was about to faint again. Before his vision turned black and he finally lost consciousness, he really wanted to curse Chowda for being so shameless. He tried to open his mouth and wanted to say something. "Do you dare to truly?" He wanted to say the words "truly fight," but in the end, Chu Feng interrupted him and didn't give him a chance. "Too weak. You're not worthy to be my enemy." Chapter 12:28. The Kuan dragon was filled with hatred. He was unwilling even if he fainted. His body trembled slightly as his consciousness struggled in the boundless darkness. He wanted nothing more than to kill his way out and clear his name. However, he was trapped in his own inner world. Tao law fragments were running amok in his body, almost splitting him into pieces. His mental fortitude is too weak. He fainted before I even exerted my strength. Is this the so-called number 1 divine blade of the Yongzhou camp? Chu Feng shook his head. His hair fluttered in the wind and he looked very serious. His heroic appearance was reflected in many people's hearts, leaving a deep impression that was difficult to erase. Of course, this was reflected in the hearts of those who didn't know the inside story. As for divine kings like Xiao Shiyun and Ji Kaixin, their mouths twitched slightly. What kind of lousy child was this? He was too shameless. They felt that even if the Kuan dragon could recover and heal his great Tao injuries, it would leave a shadow in his heart for the rest of his life. This ending was too indescribable. This isn't the first time. Last time, my brother Chowda killed the Kuan dragon. The monkey shouted happily. The golden fur on his body was shining as he cheered for Chowda. Humph! The divine king of the nine-headed bird race snorted coldly. I think the Kuan dragon was killed by Chao Da's saliva. He was very disdainful and dissatisfied. How could this happen? A group of people surrounded and intercepted Chao Da, but in the end, Chao Da succeeded and stole the creation substance, causing them to suffer losses. That makes sense. Chao Da spat out a mouthful of golden light. Isn't that the same as spitting out saliva? He directly killed the Kuan dragon. Someone nodded in agreement. Qi Feng's eyes widened. What was going on? Was he praising Chao Da? He was clearly mocking him, yet someone interpreted it in such a way. Chao Da spat out a mouthful of air and the number 1 saint was killed. Someone sighed. This was definitely someone who wished for the world to be in chaos. Of course, there were also people who didn't like it. Chao Da is indeed a great scolder. He scolds whoever he catches. Now, he angered the Kuan dragon to death. Chu Feng didn't take it to heart. He had the appearance of an expert, and he even nodded at Qi Feng in greeting. The divine king of the nine-headed bird race, Qi Feng, almost spat out a mouthful of saliva. What the hell are you nodding your head for? This is mockery and ridicule, all right? You're still pretending. Do you really think it's a compliment? Chu Feng picked up the Kuan dragon with his mace and wanted to give it a few more blows. However, he found that the Kuan dragon was in a terrible condition and was about to die. He quickly put it down gently, not wanting to bear the crime of being a murderer. It was fine for him to injure someone here, but if he really wanted to kill someone, then it would be very troublesome. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, it would have a very negative impact. He put on a very magnanimous appearance and said, "Although you have always been against me, I am a magnanimous and open-minded person. I will not bicker with you. Forget it, take care of yourself." Monkey exclaimed, "Benevolence! If it were anyone else who would show mercy to their enemies, they would have long been beaten to death." Peng Wanli nodded, "Brother, you've done well. The benevolent are invincible. We should be like this, not bickering with them. If they come for revenge, let them be. We'll receive them." Many people were speechless. That Chao Da, Chao Blackhand, had the nerve to say that he was open-minded and magnanimous? Was he worthy of the evaluation of benevolence? The group of people almost spat out their saliva. They really couldn't hold it in. Although they admitted that Chao Da was indeed powerful and had astonishing talent, even defeating the number 1 saint, it was definitely a joke to say that he was magnanimous. Who was the one who sneakily attacked just now? Everyone saw it clearly under everyone's watchful eyes. Of course, it couldn't be said that Chao Da's actions were wrong. After all, it was Qi Feng, Yun Tuo, Jin Lai, and the Kuan dragon who targeted him first, blocking his evolution path. However, it definitely couldn't be said that Chao Da was magnanimous. This fellow was a classic example of someone who didn't want to suffer losses. That was why he directly went to sneakily attack after being targeted. In order to vent the resentment in his heart, this fella didn't even hesitate to hit a deity. He went up and attacked without saying much. Didn't he see that Yun Tuo was still rolling his eyes and convulsing there? Chu Feng threw down the Kuan dragon and revealed an extremely brilliant smile. He rushed over to Jin Lin again. "What do you want to do?" Jin Lai was anxious. The other party could beat the number 1 saint when he was a quasi-saint. If he were to face his sister now, he would definitely capture and kill her. Jin Lin's heart also trembled. Although she was proud and arrogant, she felt uneasy all over now. She definitely couldn't fight with Chao Da, otherwise, it would most likely be very embarrassing. Chu Feng said, "It's nothing. I feel like old friends with Miss Jin Lin. Last time, we even got to know each other through a fight. I've long since come to a tacit understanding with her. It's not convenient for me to say some things to you, but I have a private conversation with your sister. You don't have to worry about it." "What?" The more Jin Lai listened, the more he felt uncomfortable. In the end, his expression even changed. What was this scoundrel saying? Moreover, He glanced suspiciously at his sister and inquired. Jean Lin was naturally ashamed and resentful. This Chowda was too much of a good-for-nothing. Speaking nonsense in public would arouse suspicion even if it was nothing. As expected, someone directly whispered and mentioned the matter of Chu Feng sitting on her when Jean Lai was captured. Many people had seen it. Someone mentioned it and immediately made even more people seriously doubt. Could it be that Jean Lin had really compromised with Chowda when she was captured and reached some conditions? Chowda! Jean Lin gritted her teeth. Her waist-length golden hair fluttered in the wind, and her fair and lustrous face was full of shame and resentment. Forget it. Let's talk about our matters in private. Comprehending the Tao is more important. Chu Feng retreated and actually turned around. He returned to his prayer mat and closed his eyes to comprehend the laws again. In reality, the vortex outside his body hadn't disappeared at all during this process. It had been plundering from the beginning to the end. There was a divine king core in his body. The world was turning upside down inside, as it was comprehending the Tao at an even higher level. Chu Feng felt that after such a long time, there were only 3 leaves of the Tao fusion herb left. He should continue to baptize his body and couldn't inject all the essence of the Tao fusion herb into the divine king core. For a moment, Chu Feng was quiet and everyone felt a little uncomfortable. He was still bragging just now, but in the end, he instantly became solemn. Chu Feng comprehended the Tao and attracted the essence of the Tao fusion herb into his flesh and blood. All kinds of patterns interweaved and flowed in his blood, flashed in his organs, and glowed in his bone marrow. His physique was improving again. Before long, he had reached the late stage of the quasi-sage realm and was moving towards the great circle. Chu Feng felt that as long as he was willing, he could break into the true saint realm and become increasingly powerful. He couldn't help but ponder whether there were any flaws or if there were any careless mistakes or regret. He couldn't have any problems on his path to become the strongest. He had to become the strongest. What he wanted was to become a saint with his physical body, an invincible body. Just think about it, the great dark hand of prehistory, Li Su. He was so powerful, but in the end, an accident had befallen him. How could Chu Feng not be vigilant? He carefully tempered himself. He had to walk the path of the strongest and reach the unblemished level. This was because the enemies he would face in the future might be unimaginably terrifying. Chu Feng comprehended the Tao. In his eyes, the nearby void was distorted and the prehistoric path of the great Tao appeared. There was no self or object in his heart as he tried to figure out the profound meaning of the origin. The Tao fusion herb had once carried the great Tao and left behind many Tao paths on it. Before long, he recovered and felt that there shouldn't be any problems. However, he was still worried and went to study the notes written by the Stone Fox Celestial Venerable's master. He studied them all the way from awakening to the shackles and then all the way to the divine king realm. He read them all. If he wanted to walk the path of the strongest, the various conditions were too harsh. He read a paragraph that touched on the divine king realm. It was a simple deduction that moved him greatly. He had seen it before, but after entering this world, his realm had fallen in the Yang realm and his Yin realm Tao fruit had been sealed. He was powerless even if he wanted to. Now that he had broken through again and again, it might come in handy in the future. Hence, he was attentive. This record mentioned an unimaginable evolutionary path. It was not a so-called secret manual, nor was it a mature evolutionary path, but rather a method within a theoretical conjecture. The Stone Fox Celestial Venerable's master had mentioned that this was something he had seen in the works of a predecessor. It was only a deduction and no one had succeeded in cultivating it. Cultivate a type of Tao fruit in the Yang realm, and then go to the great Yin realm to cultivate a type of Tao fruit. When the two collide, extreme Yang and extreme Yin will bloom and merge together, forming an unimaginable hybrid Tao fruit or the Tao fruit of primal chaos. The theory mentioned in this letter was very attractive because it contained a wide range of references and all types of deductions. Once it was cultivated, the benefits would be unimaginable. Of course, this process was also terrifyingly dangerous. The slightest mistake would consign one to eternal damnation. Who would have thought that after cultivating a type of Tao fruit in the Yang realm, they would still take the risk of running to the great Yin realm? A single mistake would result in them not being acclimatized and courting death. After entering another world, perhaps everything would change. If one couldn't adapt to the laws of that world, their life would be in danger. Moreover, whether or not the great Yin realm existed was still a theoretical deduction. Of course, some predecessors had confirmed that the great Yin realm did exist. But who had gone before? Of those who went there, who came back alive? Chu Feng was a little excited. Although he hadn't been to the great Yin realm, his Tao fruit from his previous life was cultivated in the lesser Yin realm, so it should be similar. Moreover, he could find special materials from the Yin realm to replenish it and make it complete. When he cultivated a matching Tao fruit in the Yang realm, it would be unimaginable if they really collided and merged together. The letter also mentioned that there was another advantage of this Tao fruit in this theory. When the extreme Yang and extreme Yin collided for the first time, there would be an intense explosion that could directly break through and break through. It would violently break through the barrier that seemed like a natural chasm. For example, if a divine king wanted to advance to the celestial venerable realm, it would take a long time. However, if one cultivated this method in theory, then it might greatly shorten the time and use the great collision force of Yin and Yang to tear apart the predicament, break through the shackles, and directly succeed in breaking through. Moreover, in the later deductions of that predecessor's work, there were further hypotheses. After cultivating that kind of Tao fruit, perhaps it could split again and turn into extreme Yin and extreme Yang. When there was a problem of breaking through, it could be fused again and collided again. Chu Feng's mind wandered, and he was very tempted. If he could go through this evolutionary path in deduction, it would undoubtedly be very heaven-defying. Of course, it was too generous to say that this path had 9 chances of death and 1 chance of survival. Perhaps it could be said that there was no chance of survival. There were some individuals whose strength was deep and immeasurable, considered to be at the peak of the world. However, after researching this path, they couldn't resist the temptation, and in the end they died miserably, all of them failing. The letter mentioned that in the list of famous people in the history of evolution, many creatures that stunned an era were killed by this path. There are thousands of paths, and it doesn't necessarily have to be chosen. However, now that I've cultivated 2 Tao fruits, it would be a pity if I don't try. Chu Feng pondered. Boom! Suddenly, the blood in his body boiled, and all the blue brilliance disappeared, turning into golden blood. His physique underwent some kind of unimaginable change. Chapter 12:29. The sovereign personage blood was activated and growing rapidly. Chu Feng's body was boiling hot as if he was in an immortal furnace, burning and roasting. Heat waves surged all over his body, and his bones, flesh, and blood were on the verge of rupturing. At the same time, he felt a vigorous life force filling his limbs and bones. The blood in his body was boiling. The blue blood was being annihilated, and the golden blood was surging continuously, flushing the blood vessel walls and spreading to every part of his body. This was a blood exchange. The blood of the first stage of the sovereign personage had disappeared, and the blue blood would never be seen again. It had all evolved into the second stage of the golden blood, which was very different from before. Chu Feng felt a powerful force surging violently. With a thought, his whole body shone like a golden sun covering him. At this moment, even his hair had turned golden, and even his pupils had turned golden. The blood exchange was still in progress. Chu Feng was convinced that he was stronger than before. An invisible domain spread out and enveloped the surroundings, causing his body to become hazy. Amidst the surging golden light, it was as though he was standing at the center of the laws and was innately invincible. At this moment, he had a feeling that he could punch through the sky and make the moon fall. However, he was very clear that this was the Yang realm, where the laws were firm. Even saints could not fly off the ground, and they were like criminals. He probably did not have the ability to move mountains and seas. However, the moment he clenched his fists, he was still incomparably confident. Who in the same realm could fight him? He really wanted to find an expert of similar realm to test the results of his evolution. He had focused on the deduction of extreme yin and extreme yang, but he did not expect that his flesh and blood would be repeatedly baptized and nourished by the Tao-melting grass, and the sovereign personage blood would transform to such an extent. Chu Feng did not know how many forms the sovereign personage had, because there were no precise records in the book. This was a taboo in the sovereign personage clans. It was said that there should be 3 or 4 forms. However, those who could truly cultivate to the 3rd form were extremely rare. After all, there were only a few sovereign personage clans. As time passed, there would always be various changes, and there would be fewer and fewer people with a strong bloodline. According to normal evolution, some people might be able to quickly change their blood by chance. However, many people might not even be able to change their blood even once in thousands or tens of thousands of years. Of course, this was only the first 2 forms. True 3rd-rank sovereign personages were incredibly rare and had nothing to do with youth. The 3rd stage was something that even some old men considered. It was said that once one reached the 3rd stage, they would be able to reverse the flow of time and return their bodies to the golden age of youth. Now, at such a young age, Chu Feng was already a 2nd-rank human king and had reached the 2nd form. In addition, he already had blue blood in his 1st form. Even the old man was shocked, repeatedly saying that it was inconceivable. Even though he didn't go into detail, this starting point seemed a bit frighteningly high. At this moment, Chu Feng was naturally going all out to loot the good fortune materials. For the sake of evolving his human monarch blood, he had to seize as much as he could. During this process, he formed a seal with both of his hands. Lightning flashed and thunder roared around his body. He was surrounded by golden arcs of lightning from head to toe. Thunderbolts struck down one after another, exploding continuously. He was using the lightning fist to conceal the blazing golden light on his body. He was worried that someone would see through his golden blood. At this moment, the arcs of electricity shone with all types of golden multicolored light that interweaved and reflected brilliance. However, he was not afraid. The reincarnation soil and the chopstick-long black wooden spear were with the divine King Dao fruit, ready to attack at any time. If there was really danger, he would kill the big guy first. It's rare to cultivate the lightning fist to this level. His flesh and blood bear the lightning runes, and his entire body is baptized by lightning. How extraordinary! Someone sighed with incomparable envy. Indeed, Chu Feng had drawn the lightning into his body and mixed it with his golden blood. The lightning rumbled in his internal organs and surged within his bones. This was very dangerous and also very breathtaking. This was equivalent to a violent version of the thunderous breathing technique. The lightning would baptize his entire body, and if he could endure it, there would be many benefits. After cultivating the lightning fist to this level, there were too many benefits for the body. He would often use his flesh and blood to attract lightning, use his bone marrow to bear the lightning, and use the electricity to refine his internal organs. How strong would his body become? That was why the Buddhist race's thunderous breathing technique could shake the world. Chowda's lightning fist baptism was violent, but as long as he healed his internal injuries, there might be a similar effect. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared around Chu Feng. The lightning transformed into dragons, and the thunderbolts turned into towering ancient trees. They were accompanied by crackling golden lightning clouds, following which the raging waves crashed against the shore. There was golden lightning everywhere, and one of them was brandishing his fists. He stood in the middle and gave off a feeling of absolute invincibility. The pupils of some people constricted. They had a premonition that Chowda's path of evolution was no small matter. His flesh and blood were golden, and his saint blood was resplendent. The lightning had fused into the cells of his body and was helping him transform. The quasi-saint realm. However, such an evolution allowed him to kill saints. This caused some people to feel a chill in their hearts. Their eyes burst out with killing intent. The nine-headed divine King Qifeng stood tall and straight. His scarlet hair danced in the wind, and his entire body was suffused with a terrifying aura. Divine monarch, divine chains of order appeared. His eyes flickered with a bloody light, and behind him was the image of a sea of blood. A terrifying vicious bird rushed out, as if it was going to spread its wings and tear apart the heavens, tearing apart space. It released cries that could shake one's soul. Duo! Qifeng shouted at this critical moment. It exploded near Qifeng like a clap of thunder. It could be seen that the sound waves were too terrifying. The impact caused the space to distort and collapse. This was a naked interference. He was trying to stop Qifeng from comprehending the Tao. He wanted to consign him to eternal damnation. How dare you! Li Jiuxiao's eyes shone with cold light. Two sword-like beams shot out from his pupils to block Qifeng's sound waves. I didn't touch him, nor did I kill him. I didn't break the rules, Qifeng said coldly. At the same time, the blood-colored demonic bird rushed out from the sea of blood behind him. Its nine-headed body let out a long cry that shook the heaven and earth. Blood-colored divine chains of order bloomed around Qifeng. There was no time to stop it. Li Jiuxiao and Mi Hong both made their moves, but they could only destroy a portion of the divine chains. They didn't have time to extinguish all of them. The terrifying sound waves shook the void. It was even more ear-piercing than thunder. This wasn't an attack, but a targeted interference. It wanted Qifeng, who was in a state of comprehension, to meet with misfortune. Not only did it want to interrupt his comprehension, but it also wanted to injure his great Tao. The monkey, Peng Wanli, Mi Qing, and the others were all shocked and anxious. This situation was too bad. A sudden attack from a divine king was a disaster for someone who was in a state of comprehension. The others also revealed strange expressions. They had seen Chowda's powerful rise, but were they going to see him fall? If one looked closely, it would be hard to punish Qifeng. It was because earlier, both sides had used this type of method, interfering with one's comprehension of the Tao, tacitly agreeing to it. Everyone stared at Qifeng to see if he would cough up blood. His Tao foundation would be torn apart and he would fall into a pool of blood. The sound waves were too terrifying. Blood-colored divine chains of order interweaved and sealed the space. The sound of thunder shook the heavens. Finally, everything calmed down. The sound waves disappeared and the divine chains were destroyed, revealing Chowda on the praying mat. Huh! Some people revealed strange expressions. He didn't fall, and the golden light around him became even more resplendent. His eyes were closed. Was he still comprehending the Tao? Who's shouting? Who's helping me comprehend the Tao? Come, I need this kind of thunderous sound to comprehend my lightning fist. Let's make the cries and roars even more intense. Qifeng said these words with his eyes closed. The scene turned silent. Li Jiuxiao was about to attack, but he directly sat back down on the praying mat, returning to peace. Mi Hong was also surprised. He sat down cross-legged again. The others were astonished. This was a provocation. A divine king's interference couldn't do anything to him and was instead ridiculed. Was he helping him comprehend the Tao? Was he inviting Qifeng from the nine-headed bird race to continue interfering and give him another round of cries and roars? Qifeng's gaze was like a blade, incomparably cold. This Chowda dared to ridicule him again and again, not putting the dignity of a divine king in his eyes. If this was in the wilderness, he would naturally attack and tear him to pieces. Divine King Qi Feng, one more song? Chu Feng said with his eyes closed. He was performing the lightning fist, as if he was comprehending the Tao. However, that wasn't the case at all. He was only absorbing the materials of creation to mature the human monarch blood and changing it. Therefore, those sound waves and those terrifying attacks couldn't do anything to him at all. He was just putting on an act. Qi Feng's eyes were cold, and his blood-red hair flew in the wind. He was like a great demon king who wanted to kill all under the heavens. Strange phenomena appeared behind him, and the nine-headed bird's true form floated up and down in the sea of blood. He looked down at Chu Feng. The rules of the battlefield can protect you for a moment, but they can't protect you forever. Sometimes, the world of the living can be said to be vast and boundless, but sometimes, it can also be said to be very small. Even if you think your talents are extraordinary, no matter how you jump around, even if you can ride the clouds for 240,000 miles in an instant, you won't be able to escape from the palms of experts. Qi Feng's voice was cold, threatening Chu Feng. As long as he was in the world of the living, it would be easy for the nine-headed bird race to kill him. He wouldn't be able to escape from their palms. Grandpa Chao is waiting for you. Aren't you from the 11th Forbidden Land? It's not likely Su didn't attack Forbidden Lands in prehistoric times. Young Master Chao also wants to emulate him and surpass him. Everyone shook their heads after hearing this. These were truly words spoken out of anger, and no one could believe it. It was easier said than done to flatten a forbidden land. These forbidden lands in the world of the living had existed well since ancient times. However, people could also see that Chowda was indeed bold. He could jump around just like that. Even if he was invincible with his words, it still required a certain amount of courage. After we go out, prepare the coffin. These were Qi Feng's last words. His killing intent was boundless, and he looked down on Chu Feng. He wanted to kill him as soon as possible. I'm waiting. If you can't kill me, you are my great-great-grandson. Bah, what's the use of having an unfilial descendant like you? I despise you. This was shedding all pretense of cordiality, and if it wasn't for the fact that everyone was watching and the rules were restricting him, Qi Feng would definitely rush over and use the Divine King's fist imprint to kill him. Rumble! At this time, Chu Feng got up and came to a praying mat not far away from Li Jiuxiao. He brazenly fought with him for the last creation substance. The last 3 leaves on the Dao Fusion grass broke with a crack, and the one facing Qi Feng flew towards Chowda along with a few fruit. Everyone knew that the Dao Fusion grand meet was about to end. Meanwhile, the 9-headed bird Qi Feng's eyes were scarlet red, and his blood-red hair danced wildly. Chapter 1230. Qi Feng's pupils constricted. His blood hair danced about chaotically. His killing intent was boundless because this brat was openly targeting him and stealing his natural luck. There were at least 6 fruits on that leaf. With a swoosh, they flew towards Chowda as a whole. Rule fragments curled around them and Dao sounds rumbled, deafening. This made one's eyes red, especially when it flew past Qi Feng's eyes and rushed towards that wild cultivator that he loathed so much. He really wanted to slap him to death. Bang! His gaze was cold. He suddenly reached out with a palm. Bloody mist surged, enveloping that leaf and directly snatching it midway, wanting to grab it. However, it was a pity that this leaf had once carried the great Tao. It was a tangible carrier of the Tao, becoming the path and embodiment of the rules. Its light illuminated the blue sky, passing through him unobstructed. Not even the great hand of a divine king could stop it. Only the purest heart and the kindest person can obtain the Tao's approval. Meanwhile, your hands are stained with blood and corpses are piled up under your feet. How can you compare to my pure heart? You're notorious and your crimes overflow. You should just save it. Chu Feng spoke with a smile on his face. If he didn't say these words, the veins on Qi Feng's forehead wouldn't have popped out. After hearing these words, Qi Feng truly began to doubt life and the so-called Tao fruit of heaven and earth. This kid was sneaky, and spittle flying from his mouth. How could he be considered pure and kind? What kind of joke was this? Were the heavens blind? Qi Feng refused to accept this. He really wanted to roar towards the heavens, wishing he could kill someone on the spot. His killing intent was revealed and cold murderous intent surged. However, he was immediately warned by the heavenly deity in the dark to restrain himself. However, on the other side, Chowda was like a spring breeze. His entire body shone with holy light and was incomparably auspicious. His expression was calm and tranquil, and he looked more and more like a charlatan. However, when he looked at Qi Feng with disdain, that kind of tranquility and holy state was immediately broken, making Qi Feng's pupils turn cold. Qi Feng didn't pay him any attention and calmly digested the Dao-fusing grass. Now, there was still more than one leaf left on the Dao-fusing grass on the altar. The roots were almost bare and were about to be completely divided up. Qi Feng examined his body. The blue blood had long since disappeared, and his golden blood was surging. His body was sturdy and powerful, and his soul light was also abnormally vigorous. He felt that even if secret treasures were used to blast his body or sharp weapons were used to carve his skin, they wouldn't necessarily be able to break his body. Today, he had been tempered thousands and thousands of times by the creation substance. Such an evolution was too beneficial. At this level, he had no problem breaking secret treasures with his bare hands. The most crucial thing was that he discovered the liquefaction of his soul light. This was very astonishing. This was an extremely terrifying accumulation. This was very much in line with the characteristics of the strongest path. Empyrean Rockfox's master had written records of this. So far, his path had been correct, and there had been no flaws after testing. Qi Feng understood that as long as he was willing, he could become a saint right now and directly surpass the current quasi-saint realm, going up another level. However, he did not do so because he could do so at any time. There was no need for him to continue experiencing this atmosphere. It was already too glaring. He was accumulating the creation substance, apart from absorbing it from his flesh and blood, and refining it with the divine monarch core. He had also collected some from the stone jar to slowly nourish his body after he left. Qi Feng's entire body was golden. He silently sensed the changes in his body as he waited for the distinguished meeting to end. After he calmed down, he discovered that his golden blood had converged and returned to scarlet red once again. This was good too. He could return to being ordinary on normal days, but once he wanted to risk his life, and there was a great battle of life and death, he could activate the golden humanoid monarch blood at any time. He tried several times, and the transformation between the red blood and golden blood was very smooth. At the final juncture, he had a moment of inspiration. He used his flesh and blood as a cauldron and his soul light as a great medicine. His flesh and blood shone as he refined the soul light medicine. For a moment, millions upon millions of strands of multicolored light surrounded his body, and a sweet fragrance assailed the nostrils. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned, and they couldn't help but take a deep breath. Qi Feng had such an idea in a flash. It was just a simple test, but he didn't expect it to have such an astonishing effect. At this moment, his flesh was the cauldron, and his skeleton was the firewood. His blood transformed into flames and burned his soul light as he refined a cauldron of human medicine. Why are you doing this? Qi Feng himself was flabbergasted. Why did he suddenly have this kind of probing just now? All of a sudden, he knew why it was like this. It was because he thought of a certain mysterious phrase, and his body was stirred up, so he carried out some kind of test. At the heaven-span immortal waterfall, he had encountered an ominous object, the time furnace. He had once used the reincarnation earth to listen to a strange voice from within. The heavens cannot bury those, bury them in the floating earth of the four poles. cut down the yin and yang firewood, draw in the fire of the great sky, receive the flames of the ancient universe, and burn. At that time, the process was very terrifying. He didn't feel anything when he held the time furnace in his hand, but after he withdrew his hand, he probed his finger into the stone jar. When he touched the reincarnation earth, he once clearly saw that there were terrifying black fingerprints on his palm. That scene made his hair stand on end. Moreover, he had heard the voice from above. According to Chu Feng's understanding, that wasn't a passage of scripture, but a method to burn the strongest life form in history. To destroy it, that so-called time furnace might very well be a furnace that incinerates corpses. However, Chu Feng was also enlightened amidst the ominous. If he used this to refine his body and didn't die, then he would have an invincible body through all ages. Today, he had transformed again and again. His human king blood had matured, and he had reached the second form. His flesh and blood were extremely powerful, and he had stepped onto the path of the most powerful, flawless and tough. Thus, there were some feelings in the depths of his heart. When he thought of the voice in the time furnace, he couldn't help but attempt this. There was definitely a mistake in his path. He couldn't find the so-called flames of the great sky, the flames of the ancient universe, and so on. This was a moment of inspiration, a sudden thought that calcined himself. At this time, his Yin realm Dao fruits and Yang realm Dao fruits were simultaneously suffused with specks of fiery light. They entered his body and wandered about his blood, burning the furnace. His flesh was refining the soul light medicine. For a time, his soul light seemed to be condensed and purified, as if it was about to turn into a pill. Not long after, it even wanted to be molded into his appearance. He sat cross-legged in the void of flesh and blood, shining with dazzling splendor that illuminated his body. He silently comprehended. All paths were tried and tested. What he was doing might not necessarily be correct, but right now, he felt that it wasn't bad. This was a different kind of self-tempering. At this moment, regardless of whether it was his soul light or his flesh and blood, they all became even more tenacious and even purer. Traces of metabolic products were expelled from his body. Cultivation is limitless. Chu Feng could only sigh like this. As time passed, the pill in the furnace shattered and the person disappeared. Then, it reappeared and transformed several times. Finally, a golden pill floated in the air. It was the size of a fist and was formed from his soul light. At the center of the void within his body, all kinds of law fragments twined about and pure white mist curled up. It was extremely divine. Moreover, after that, the golden pill took form and took on a human form, taking on his appearance. It swallowed and spat out good fortune matter. The starry river shone all around and curled up one after another around him. The black hole of the universe and the stars in the heavens all appeared. Chu Feng was astonished. Then, he frowned. This wasn't what he wanted. Wasn't this a bit like the cultivation path, that the great evil spirit that the old ancient spoke of? Bang! In the next moment, his flesh and blood shone. The stars in the heavens, the background of the universe, the bottomless black hole, and the human-shaped soul body sitting cross-legged in the center all disintegrated. Chi. He used his flesh as a cauldron. His blood shone and burned as he forged it anew. In the end, his soul light transformed into a sword embryo. Golden multicolored light blossomed and carried with it a boundless murderous aura. It had a kind of unstoppable momentum. Chu Feng felt that if he were to slash out with his current soul light, this kind of sword embryo was enough to destroy all kinds of secret treasures and sharp weapons. As for killing other people's soul light, it was also very easy. But this wasn't what he wanted either. Perhaps refining his own soul light into a sword might increase its destructive power very fiercely for a while, but there would ultimately be drawbacks. My body is the cauldron and my soul is the medicine. I'm only trying. I don't necessarily have to achieve anything. It's not good to think too much. Chu Feng shook his head. He felt that there was no need to be overly persistent in transforming his soul light into anything. He would just proceed according to his most initial idea. The sword embryo disintegrated and dissipated in the flesh and blood void. He refined it anew. He used his flesh and blood as a cauldron and his soul light as a cauldron of great medicine as he continuously boiled it. Towards the end, the fragrance emitted by his body became more and more attractive. It astonished the evolvers in the vicinity, and they were deeply amazed. After that, Chu Feng refined his soul light as medicine to make his flesh and soul even more pure. Moreover, he was very daring. He dispersed the flames and returned the cauldron to his body. He directly consumed the soul medicine that he had refined and rushed towards his limbs and bones. In a split second, Chu Feng's skin was sparkling and translucent. His entire body was covered in countless rays of multicolored light. He had returned. His soul light blossomed as he returned. He felt as though he was going to ascend with the multicolored light and expel all the worldly air. There was no dirt on his entire body. This kind of feeling was too special. The soul medicine entered his flesh and blood. It was like a reincarnation. It was as though he had experienced a special reincarnation. It could actually be like this? This gave him a huge shock. A person could still reincarnate in his own flesh and blood. This kind of attempt of his could only be said to be an extremely daring action under special circumstances. Which ordinary person would act recklessly? After he calmed down, his entire body broke out in cold sweat. He felt a bit of lingering fear. What was going on? He felt like he was possessed just now. How could he dare act recklessly like this? He examined himself and had a type of wondrous comprehension. He was a bit more tenacious than just now. From his flesh to his soul there was growth and purification. However, he didn't try again. He was reflecting because his guts just now were a bit too great. A single mishap and it would be a death calamity. Why did I do that? Chu Feng continuously reflected on himself. He was convinced that he really was a bit bewitched not long ago. He shouldn't have been so reckless. After thinking it over, the source was that scripture. In the end, he was convinced that the terrifying voice he heard from the time furnace echoed from the depths of his heart. It made him bewitched and made him subconsciously test it. Is it starting just like this? Chu Feng's heart couldn't calm down. A cloud appeared. He didn't know if it was haze or a mysterious lightning cloud, but it made his heart tremble. He believed that the time furnace was very mysterious and inauspicious. There were too many secrets hidden behind it. Sooner or later, when he reached a high enough level, he would also encounter those problems. But he didn't expect that he would be implicated now and that he was the passive one. He always had a kind of ambition. He wanted to break through the shackles and continuously improve himself. One day, he would encounter the inauspicious and great mysteries of evolutionary history. He would witness some of the truth behind reincarnation as well as other evolutionary civilizations in history. However, it was still a bit early for changes to occur now. When Chu Feng opened his eyes again, he discovered that everyone had stood up. The Dao Fusion Grass Distinguished Meeting had already ended. Clearly, his harvest was great and he had obtained too many benefits from it. Chapter 1231. Chu Feng stood up, full of energy. His body was covered in flowing light as if it was refined from mother gold. He felt much stronger than when he had arrived. The most important thing was that his divine king core had been tempered. If he really encountered the nine-headed divine King Chi Feng and the others in the wilderness, he really wanted to see if he could slap them to death. In this area, the peach blossoms were pink and had a sweet fragrance as they danced in the air. On the altar, the Dao-fusing grass had withered. All of the creation substances had been absorbed by everyone. Let's go. The monkey came over and patted Chu Feng's shoulder with a strange look in his eyes. This irascible brother who had beaten him up as soon as he arrived was really arrogant this time. Just now, he had seen with his own eyes that Chu Feng had absorbed a large amount of creation substance, even more than the divine king. This matter concerned the upper limit of a person's future. If Chowda was given time, it was hard to say what his future achievements would be. All substances have a saturation point. I reckon that you've directly exceeded it. What a waste. The monkey muttered. Peng Wanli, Xiao Yao, and the others all felt that it was a waste for Chowda to absorb so much. He wouldn't be able to digest it at all and would have long since reached saturation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stopped at the quasi-saint level. He should have gone even higher. Chu Feng smiled. He knew his own situation. He just didn't want to break through. If he went out, he would become a saint in a blink of an eye. Once he reached the peak of the saint realm, he would have to consider the final purification, tempering, and squeezing out all of his potential. After that, he would be like a fish in the ocean and a bird in the sky. He would start to use the 3 seeds in the stone jar to absorb the pollen. His strength might improve by leaps and bounds. Chu Feng was really looking forward to the 3 seeds germinating in the Yang realm. What kind of changes would there be? What kind of flowers would they bear? After all, it was said that they were seeds from the Yang realm. Mi Qing, your skin is getting whiter and whiter. You look purer and more beautiful. You have a celestial aura about you. Chu Feng greeted. The monkey didn't look at him kindly. Why did it feel like this guy was flirting with his sister in front of him? Mi Qing had absorbed a lot of Dao-fusing herb essence, and her skin was snow-white and translucent. There was a sweet smile on her face, and she appeared quite calm and easygoing. However, she also curled her lips, because this time, Chowda obtained too many benefits, making her feel jealous and envious, a bit heaven-defying. Then, Chu Feng said to Xiao Yao, Old Xiao, your aunt is over there. Won't you introduce her to me? Although I greeted her, I didn't take it seriously at all. Who are you calling Old Xiao? I'm not even as old as you. Xiao Yao didn't like what he heard. At the very least, after Chu Feng transformed into Chowda, his face was more mature. He looked like a tall and strong youth. Chu Feng didn't want others to think that he was just a young boy. Your Aunt Wang is here, Chu Feng whispered. Don't even think about it. Wait till you become a divine king. Xiao Yao said unhappily. He really wanted to give him a stick and knock him out. Chu Feng stopped joking and didn't provoke them. He walked forward and solemnly expressed his thanks to Li Jiuxiao and divine King Mi Hong. The former had a smile on his face, treating him as a close friend and thinking that he wasn't bad. The latter patted his shoulder and said, Chowda, you are really good and extraordinary. Then, he called his sister Mi Qing over and introduced her formally, even including Mi Qing's birthday and various hobbies. Mi Qing was speechless. Wasn't this big brother being too nosy? In the distance, Monkey was getting more and more unhappy. He tried to stop them, but his big brother was so enthusiastic, wanting nothing more than to marry his sister Mi Qing to Chu Feng. Monkey, I think you better not be a bad person. Otherwise, you'll be a monkey inside and out. Peng Wanli gloated. When facing the 2 divine kings, Chu Feng felt a little guilty. The more enthusiastic they were, the more guilty he felt. He felt that he had let them down. Chowda, your name also has the word "de" in it. In the future, people will definitely compare you to a bastard with the word "d." I hope that one day you can teach him a lesson for me. Li Jiuxiao spoke with an unfriendly expression, making such a request to Chu Feng. Yes, that person is Jidade. He even threatened me and confronted me at the wasteland arena. Chowda, if there's a chance, help me teach him a lesson too. Mi Hong also spoke like this. His eyes flashed with golden light when he thought of what had happened back then. He hadn't forgotten how Jidade and Old Gu had caused a scene at the banquet. Don't worry, big brothers. Your matters are my matters. I'll definitely do my best. Chu Feng patted his chest and promised. However, he felt a little guilty inside. However, he soon felt relieved. He was already prepared to run away and didn't want to stay here any longer. There was probably nothing to be embarrassed about. He would find a chance to repay them in the future. In the distance, the divine king of the nine-headed bird race, Qi Feng, stared coldly at Chu Feng. His murderous intent permeated the air, and he couldn't wait to pounce on Chu Feng. Li Jiuxiao suddenly turned around and said, "Nine-headed bird, don't put on airs here. I'm saying that if you dare to touch a finger of Chowda's, I'll kill you." Who was he? He was one of the strongest divine kings in the entire Yang realm. He was much more famous than Qi Feng. Moreover, he came from the Li race, one of the 5 strongest races in the Yang realm. He was very confident and didn't fear any competitors. Chu Feng's heart was warm. Divine King Li was a passionate person and was very warm towards him. It was not bad. The moon waxes and wanes, dynasties rise and fall, and evolvers have their peaks and valleys. Divine King Li, you're indeed very strong on your path of advancement. However, no one can guarantee that they'll always be at the peak. It's fine for you to look down on the world like this. It's fine if you want to protect some people. However, I don't think it's worth it. Don't implicate yourself in the end. No one can guarantee that they'll always be on the path of advancement. Everyone will eventually hit rock bottom. Qi Feng said indifferently. He didn't allow Li Jiuxiao to act up. He turned and left. He transformed into a bird, flapped his wings, and disappeared into the horizon. Li Jiuxiao snorted coldly and watched him leave. Finally, he patted Chu Feng's shoulder and said, "Be careful. The nine-headed bird race is the most vicious. They eat people up without spitting out the bones. Don't leave the camp for now." "Divine King Li, you have to be careful too," Chu Feng said. "I hope he's more daring. Unfortunately, he doesn't have that kind of courage." Li Jiuxiao left. The group of divine kings was the first to disappear. Chu Feng glanced at Qing Yin, who was not far away. He didn't say anything in the end. He turned and walked towards Monkey and the others, leaving with them. He felt that this wasn't a good time to acknowledge her. Moreover, he didn't know Qing Yin's true feelings and attitude. In the various camps, from the Golden Arhats to the Divine Kings, there was a heated discussion at this moment. That was because those who had participated in the Daofu's grass meet had returned with all kinds of news. Brother Gengji Chowda had challenged the Divine Kings at that meet. They had fought for the Daofu's grass with the same group of people, but he had actually not been at a disadvantage. He had obtained the most creation materials. Chowda became famous after that battle. People quickly learned that he had defeated the Kuan Dragon and Yun Tuo at the meet, shocking the Saints and Divine Level camp. Many people had seen with their own eyes that the Kuan Dragon had been carried back. Yun Tuo's 3 heads were all that was left. It was a tragic sight. Even though there was some news that had spread, no one believed it. This was too cruel. The number 1 saint had actually been crippled, and the 3-headed divine dragon, Yun Tuo, had almost been beaten to death. That's nothing. You weren't there and didn't see it with your own eyes. That Chowda is blessed by the heavens. Even the 9-headed bird divine king failed to compete for the creation materials. The divine king was envious and almost vomited blood. What's going on? Many people were puzzled. Even the divine king couldn't win against that brother Gengji. Someone explained, the heavenly venerable once said that Chowda's heart is pure, pure and benevolent, so it's easier for him to approach the great Tao. No wonder. Everyone says that Chowda's temperament is honest and straightforward. They even teased him for being brother Gengji. So it's actually like this. His heart is like crystal, untainted by dust, possessing the heart of a newborn. After this spread, many people looked like they were suddenly enlightened and felt that they finally understood what was going on. The various camps were all discussing that Chu Feng was pure and benevolent. This was a person with a pure heart, benevolent and righteous. He was worth befriending. This made those who were related, for example, Jin Lai, Yun Tuo, and the others who had previously woken up, almost vomit blood from anger. Even this could be spread? Pure and benevolent, my ass. That Black Hand Chow was definitely rotten from the root. He wasn't a good person, so how could he be evaluated like this? Of course, this was because their standpoints were different, causing them to feel grief and indignation. They were rather unwilling to accept this. This was especially the case as it spread a step further. People like Yun Tuo and the Kuan Dragon, who had previously fought against Chu Feng, became negative examples. This was because people felt that the enemies of those who were pure and benevolent would most likely not be good people. When this kind of conclusion came out, those who were related, Chi Feng, Jin Lai, Yun Tuo, and the others who had just woken up, were dumbfounded. They really wanted to vomit blood. Then, they hurriedly launched an attack. They sent people to explain and inform them that this so-called pure and benevolent person would sneak up on others during a distinguished meeting. He was too much of a scum. Chu Feng returned to the Golden Body Camp and soon discovered that the gazes of Monkey and the others were a little off. This was because, according to strength, Chu Feng should have entered the Quasi-Sage camp and was about to move away. This made Monkey and the others feel very upset. They had gone to participate in the distinguished meeting together, and after returning, Chowda directly broke through and surpassed them by a major realm. However, they weren't discouraged. Normally speaking, as long as they continued to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time, the essence of the Dao fusion grass would ferment in their bodies. They would also break through and catch up. Chu Feng was very calm. In fact, he was thinking about how to quickly escape. He still felt that he had obtained such a great fortune and become a thorn in some people's eyes. Was he still going to stay here for the new year? The sooner he ran, the sooner he would be free. Where's Chowda? Suddenly, someone shouted. It was an elder, his voice fluctuating left and right, extremely fleeting. His strength was extremely great, at the very least, he was a supreme divine king. Chowda, my dear son-in-law, where are you? Following that, another voice rang out. Moreover, a middle-aged man descended into the camp. His strength was very terrifying, and his divine king blood chi filled the air, making people revere him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Light flickered and more than a dozen figures descended in succession. They were probably late divine kings and were all experts from powerful races. My dear son-in-law, Chowda, come and see me. Chu Feng was tongue-tied and stood there stiffly. The six-eared macaque, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao were also dumbfounded. What situation was this? Chowda's father-in-law had come? Chapter 1232. Chu Feng had a strange look on his face. A group of fathers-in-law? His heart was thumping wildly. Where did all these fathers-in-law come from? Could it be that the heavens had opened their eyes and bestowed him with such a generous gift? That was because he had heard clearly that some of them called their precious daughter a princess, while others called their granddaughter a celestial fairy. All of them had great backgrounds. Chu Feng was stunned. Not long ago, at the Dao Fusion Grand Meeting, he had publicly acknowledged his brother-in-law. Could it be that the heavens had eyes and had now fulfilled his wish? What a dilemma! Who should he choose? The dozen or so fathers-in-law all had great backgrounds, and the auras they exuded were too terrifying. They were all veteran god kings, and all of them had come to Chowda to acknowledge him as their son-in-law. Chu Feng was a little dizzy. This kind of happiness had come too suddenly. As for the six-eared macaque, Peng Wanli and Xiao Yao, they even began to doubt their lives. Was there still any reason for this? The heavenly Tao was unfair. So many veteran god kings, all of whom came from famous families, had actually come to Chowda to acknowledge him as their son-in-law. Could it be that they didn't see them standing here? They were all indignant. There was no need to mention Mi Tian. He believed himself to be the Monkey King, and the six-eared macaque race's bloodline was extremely majestic and hard to find, but in the end, he was ignored. Like a peacock spreading its tail, Peng Wanli revealed his true form. His golden-winged great Peng's posture was abnormally dazzling, and golden rays of light illuminated the void. He looked extremely heroic and mighty. However, they were all ignored. More than 10 experienced experts with great achievements all recognized Chowda, their faces full of smiles as they passionately called out to him. "Son-in-law, come here. Don't miss out on a good marriage. Old man, stay away from my son-in-law. This is my precious princess's Tao companion. Do you want to start a war with my clan? Old glutton, you're too overbearing. This is my family's son-in-law. Do you want to fight with me?" Monkey, Peng Wanli, and the others were thrown into disarray. What kind of dog's hit luck did Chowda have? A group of powerful families had come to capture their son-in-law. They really wanted to say, "Old masters, please open your eyes. Don't you see that there are a few handsome youths here?" How could he not be noticed by someone with unparalleled talent and heroic spirit? Six-eared Macaque, Xiao Yao, and the rest of them were pissed. They felt that there was no justice in the world. However, soon after, their eyelids began to jump, and then they were horrified. It was because after carefully identifying them, they were truly frightened quite badly. They recognized a few old fellas with great backgrounds. At this time, the few of them understood that some of the clans here had extremely shocking origins, making even their families feel fearful. In an instant, the monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao all began to sympathize with Chu Feng. It wasn't easy to be a son-in-law. It was hard to say whether this was Yen Li's fortune or her nightmare. For example, the Taotai clan had come. It was a terrifying demon clan among the beast race. If the godly kings of this clan had not devoured a few godly kings of the same level, they would be too embarrassed to go out. It was said that the 9-headed bird tribe ate people without spitting out the bones, but compared to this tribe, it was nothing. They didn't spit out anything they swallowed. They digested everything they ate without leaving a single strand of hair behind. The most outrageous thing was that 500 years ago, the pearl of this clan had accidentally swallowed the groom on their wedding night. The next day, she became a widow. Apart from that, the Cannibal Tree clan had also come. They were extremely savage. Although the middle-aged man's jade-green hair danced in the wind and he had an extraordinary bearing as a godly king, once he revealed his true form, it would be quite tragic. He was destined to be filled with blood and corpse energy. There were man-eating flowers in the wilderness, and there were cannibal trees on the blood highlands of the Yang world. In the habitat of this clan, they would all reveal their true forms, which were towering trees. Usually, every cannibal tree would be filled with corpses, and they were all gods. They were all hung there, and the branches were all over the place. This clan ate gods as food. Among the plant-type evolvers, they were one of the most ferocious clans. Monkey and the others immediately shivered. They felt that it was better to stay away from such a blessing and leave it to Chowda. Chu Feng still didn't know that Happy's footsteps were a little shaky. What was going on? A group of fathers-in-law had come, and they had all set their sights on him? He guessed that this should have something to do with his performance at the Tao Fusion meet. Since ancient times, it was very realistic to search for a son-in-law. This meet was equivalent to a major test. He had done too well in the test, and was now being targeted. Chu Feng revealed a smile. He was really intoxicated by the atmosphere. In fact, he felt that with so many powerful clans coming together to choose him as their son-in-law, could he ignore the 9-headed bird clan? If the 9-headed bird clan really wanted to deal with him, he would just close the door and release his fathers-in-law. He didn't believe that he couldn't deal with that clan. Chu Feng was truly giddy. Now, he was surrounded by a group of fathers-in-law like the moon surrounded by stars. Some pulled on his arms, some grabbed his wrists, and some even put their arms around his shoulders. He really wanted to say that this was inappropriate. If they could really do it, they would be father-in-law and son-in-law. This wasn't good. "My dear son-in-law, come with me. After entering my clan, there will be mountains of resources. You will become a god in a short time, and then you will look down on the world," said a very fat old man. His belly was a little big and his face was oily. It could even be said that he looked a little fat. This was a divine king, so why was his belly even bigger than a water jar? Couldn't he easily refine energy? Why didn't he continue? Chu Feng was suspicious. He carefully asked the old man which race he was from. "I am from the Sky Canopy race. My daughter is in love with you," the old man introduced with a radiant face. His big belly shook as he held onto Chu Feng's hand and didn't let go. Chu Feng really wanted to say that his daughter had never seen him before, so how could she be in love with him? It wasn't even his idea. However, after hearing that this old man was from the Sky Canopy race, he felt that it wasn't bad. That was because he was from the same race as Peng Wanli and could be considered acquaintances. Chu Feng immediately greeted Peng Wanli with a smile. "Old Shao, she is from the same race as you. Don't tell me this old man's daughter is that peerless cousin of yours?" His face was full of anticipation, and he was very happy and joyful. Peng Wanli was expressionless as if he didn't want to say more. He only wanted to tell him that she wasn't. "What's with your expression? Are you unhappy because it's not your cousin?" asked Chu Feng. Peng Wanli's face twitched, but in the end, he still couldn't bear it. He revealed a sympathetic expression and simply explained the situation. He wasn't familiar with this old man and they weren't from the same race. "How are you not familiar? Aren't we both from the Sky Canopy race?" Chu Feng questioned and then shouted. "I am from the Sky Canopy race." Beside Chu Feng, the old man's face was full of joy as he corrected him. Chu Feng was suspicious. He looked at this old man and then at Peng Wanli. The latter didn't say anything and kept his mouth shut. In the end, Peng Wanli's hair stood on end. He couldn't bear to look at Chu Feng and finally wrote something in the air to tell him the truth. "Sky Canopy race?" Chu Feng's hair immediately stood on end. He immediately thought of the legend of the Lesser Een realm, that Sky Canopy marshal. Damn! He staggered and almost fell to the ground in fright. There really was such a race in the Yang realm. Were they the descendants of Ba Jia? They wanted to marry him? Soon, he understood that the so-called Sky Canopy race was actually another name for the swine race in the exotic desolate. After a supreme expert of this race transcended and led the swine race to become the swine race, he felt that it was inelegant and thus changed the name to Sky Canopy. Chu Feng was trembling as he was pulled by the old pig by the wrist. His face was about to turn green. He couldn't choose this old man as his father-in-law even if he was beaten to death. He wanted nothing more than to run away immediately. Earlier, he was still dizzy and thought that the heavens had opened their eyes. He thought that this happiness had come too suddenly, but now, his heart was trembling. Beside him, an old man with a head full of black hair like steel needles and a full beard stood up. He looked extremely fierce and ferocious. He opened his bloody mouth and said to Chu Feng, "Don't be afraid, my dear son-in-law. Even if you marry into our family, you will be from our race. You definitely can't go to this old pig's house." Chu Feng looked at his wild appearance and his heart trembled again. What race was this? The distance was too close, so he didn't dare to use his fiery eyes. Someone said, "My dear son-in-law, you can't go. You can't choose this old fellow's daughter. Do you know who he is? It's a Taotai. The daughters of their race will even swallow their Tao companions on their wedding night." After Chu Feng heard this, he once again looked at the powerful old man with the hair like steel needles. He really felt his hair stand on end. He couldn't choose this old father-in-law either. He looked at the green-haired, extremely heroic middle-aged man beside him and felt that this divine king was still the most reliable. At the very least, his appearance was handsome and his daughter wasn't bad either. The old Taotai immediately didn't like what he heard and said, old fellow from the divine food tree race, who are you talking about? Are you good? Come, old friends, let's use our magic power together, and make him reveal his true form. Let your son-in-law see what the divine food tree race looks like. While speaking, several old kings really did join hands and pressured the green-haired middle-aged man. They suppressed him until he swayed on the spot and revealed an afterimage with a wung sound. An ancient tree that reached into the heavens appeared. Corpses hung from its branches. Blood energy surged and the corpse mist was dense. It was too miserable. Chu Feng's face turned green. This heroic middle-aged man actually had many corpses hanging from his body? The old Taotai said, "Do you know what the divine food tree is? It uses deities as food and must eat at least one deity every day. My dear son-in-law, don't be afraid. These are all just food." The divine food tree transmitted sound. In a split second, Chu Feng's fine hairs stood on end and he felt a bit apprehensive. He wouldn't judge a book by its cover even if he was beaten to death. In addition, he felt that this wasn't a beautiful blessing. It was clearly a bottomless pit. He wanted nothing more than to immediately run away. What kind of father-in-law were these? Canopy, Taotai, divine food tree. Each one was more unreliable than the last. They were all fiendish, and in short, he couldn't accept them. There were also old divine kings introducing themselves. Some were from the devil race, while others were from the bone race. Just hearing their names made Chu Feng feel uneasy all over. Of course, there were also people from the divine clan, and they were all extraordinary. For example, the heavenly winged race and the light race were all powerful races whose names shook the Yang realm. Moreover, their races were all handsome and extraordinary. Just as Chu Feng was looking forward to it, a shout came from the distance. "Father, I'm here!" "Father, can your daughter go over?" A woman transmitted her voice. Then, Chu Feng saw the Canopy race's old man with a flushed face and a big belly shouting, "Come, my darling daughter." Additionally, the Taotai and divine food tree race's divine kings also responded. It seemed their daughters had also arrived. At this moment, Chu Feng's scalp went numb. This kind of happiness was unbearable. He immediately wanted to run away. He couldn't stay in this place anymore. It was simply frightening him to death. In a flash, he understood that this was retribution. Not long ago, he had recognized his brother-in-law to everyone at the Dao Fusion Grass gathering. Now, all kinds of karma had come knocking on his door. His face twitched. Was this considered the heavens opening their eyes? They actually bestowed him like this. Retribution had come knocking on his door. "Seniors, please let go first. I have something to say to the monkey." Chu Feng's face was deathly pale as he pleaded like this. The group of fathers-in-law were very understanding. They immediately let go and satisfied his wish. That was because they were very confident that this son-in-law wouldn't be able to escape. They were such a large group of people, and they were all veteran divine kings. Who could snatch Chowda away from here? Chu Feng threw himself to the monkey and the others. He was just short of tears and snot. This was 2F** King sad. He had been tricked so badly. He wanted to shove the monkey, Peng Wanli and Xiao Yao over and replace him. When he saw Mi Qing secretly laughing in front of him, Chu Feng's eyes lit up. He grabbed Mi Qing's arm and refused to let go. "What do you want to do?" The monkey immediately became anxious. Mi Qing was also embarrassed and angry. Chowda let go. Chapter 1233. He wouldn't let go even if he died. Chu Feng grabbed onto Mi Qing's jade-like arm as if he was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. How could he let go? "Your brother introduced us to each other," Chu Feng said. What did he mean? Mi Qing looked at him with half-closed eyes. Her large eyes were full of spirit. She was originally as beautiful as a fairy, but now she was a little embarrassed. "I didn't. I've been guarding against you." The monkey was anxious. Firstly, he really didn't want to be the scapegoat. Secondly, He really didn't want this philanderer Chowda to be so close to his sister. Move to the side, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Big Brother Mi Hong. Chu Feng's words made the monkey choke on his words. In an instant, Peng Wanli, Xiao Yao, and even Mi Qing naturally understood. Mi Hong had intended to introduce his sister to Chowda. This was because he thought highly of Chowda and hoped that they could get closer. He even hoped that they could develop a relationship that surpassed friendship. The monkey naturally understood as well. He bared his teeth and said angrily, Chu Feng, don't bully your friend's sister. Chu Feng cast a sidelong glance at him. They all say that you shouldn't bully your friend's wife. You clearly have bad intentions. What are you thinking? The monkey was about to go berserk. He had actually been hit instead. But very soon, Chu Feng gave in and transmitted his voice. Brother Monkey, save me. Indeed, his face had turned green. The dozen or so fathers-in-law behind him were closing in. Were they going to snatch her? Seniors, I've actually already. At this point, Chu Feng hugged Mi Qing's arm even tighter. He wasn't willing to let go. Mi Qing was both embarrassed and angry. She had never seen such a shameless person. She was graceful and elegant, and her eyes were usually pure. Her clothes were whiter than snow and she was transcendent. But now, she was a little flustered. She had never been pulled and hugged like this before. Big sister, I'm going to be taken away today. This is just a temporary offense, Chu Feng said in a low voice. Who are you calling big sister? Mi Qing glared. Chu Feng was in the mood to cry. At this critical moment, her focus was actually on this. She was obviously not on the same channel as him. Seeing the group of veteran God Kings surround him again, Chu Feng hurriedly summoned up his courage and spoke. Seniors, I, Chowda, am not worthy enough to have all of you appear together. However, I am ashamed. I am truly not worthy of the pearls of the various races. The group of veteran godly monarchs all had very complicated expressions. They really wanted to say, if you hadn't swallowed so many Tao-fusing herbs, who would recognize you? This kind of grass that had borne the weight of the great Tao could raise one's upper limit. They felt that Chowda's future achievements were destined to be extremely high and would be extremely amazing. Naturally, they wanted to find a son-in-law. At the same time, because Chowda Tsai had absorbed a large amount of Tao-fusing grass, it would be extremely beneficial to his Tao partner if he used some methods in time. Therefore, these godly kings were tempted and came to capture their son-in-law. Firstly, he wanted to obtain a future great master. Secondly, he wanted to fulfill his daughter's wishes. The cultivation world was a place where hundreds of barges and tens of thousands of clans competed against each other. After stepping onto the path of evolution, if one wanted to stand at the absolute peak, the path would be extremely cruel. Which peak expert didn't have rivers of blood flowing beneath their feet? And if they were the slightest bit careless, they would also die a miserable death. Comparatively speaking, capturing a son-in-law like this to strengthen their daughter or granddaughter was too gentle. It could be considered a shortcut, so they naturally had to fight for it. They believed that there were even more intense people who wanted to directly refine Chowda. After all, they might be able to refine the essence of the Tao-fusing grass in a short period of time. As long as Chu Feng went out in the near future, there would definitely be a large number of people watching him. They would be waiting outside the camp to capture him and refine him. Cough! At this moment, a cough rang out, helping Chu Feng resolve the awkward situation in front of him. An old monkey walked over from the end of the horizon. His entire body was golden. Although he had a thunderous mouth and was emaciated, his appearance was dignified. The old ancestor of the six-eared macaque race had actually appeared again. The dozen or so veteran godly kings nearby all felt their scalps go numb for a moment. Their bodies trembled slightly as they hurriedly bowed to greet the six-eared macaque. What a disgrace! His soft shout was like the sound of a great bell, causing the dozen or so godly kings to tremble and their blood to surge. They were so shocked that they felt like their bodies were about to explode. The old monkey was just speaking normally, but it made them feel like they were about to disintegrate. That feeling was too terrifying, and even their souls were trembling. It was like ants on the ground facing a prehistoric giant beast. Still not letting go? At this time, the six-eared macaque stared at Chu Feng again. Seeing him holding his little princess Mi Qing's lotus arm, the old monkey's mouth twitched slightly. He wanted to lose his temper, but he held it back. Let go! The monkey also shouted in a low voice. He understood the situation. His little sister's future Tao companion might be extraordinary and cause a great commotion. And all of this was arranged by this old ancestor in front of him. Mi Qing's pretty face naturally turned red. The elders of the race had arrived, but this Chao De still hadn't let go and was actually daydreaming. Chu Feng finally came back to his senses and let go. You are not bad. Soon, Mi Tian and Mi Qing will enter the revered 8 trigrams furnace. This old master will give it a try and see if I can fight for a spot for you. The old six-eared macaque's words shocked everyone. Even the monkey siblings were surprised. The conditions offered by their old ancestor were too shocking. The revered 8 trigrams furnace's terrain was not an ordinary place. It was connected to a forbidden area. That area was one of the famous forbidden areas of the Yang realm. This old ancestor of the six-eared macaque actually wanted to give Chao De such an opportunity. This shocked the dozen or so veteran godly kings, and then their hearts trembled. In the end, the powerhouses of the dozen or so races sighed. They couldn't compare. This old monkey was trying to rope in Chao De. Even if he didn't marry his daughter, giving such a spot would be enough. Chao De would be deeply grateful, and the six-eared macaque race would be able to rope in a future great master. Chu Feng's heart was also shaken. He had long heard of that forbidden area. The 8 trigrams furnace was only a part of that mountain range, and the real terrain was called revered. The revered land could be ranked in the top 10 forbidden areas of the Yang realm. Chu Feng was a little stunned. All of a sudden, a huge pie fell on his head? He wanted to grin and quickly thank them. When he was in the lesser Yin realm, he had entered the lowest grade imitation of the revered 8 trigrams furnace. Even then, he had reaped great rewards and refined the fiery eyes. What would happen if he entered the real revered ancestral land? He was a little expectant. The group of god kings left with regret. It was difficult for them to turn back after taking a step. Virtuous son-in-law, the doors of our canopy race will always be open to you. We're waiting for you. Good child, our Tautai race has high hopes for you. Even if you can't become our son-in-law, you can come to our race as a guest in the future. We'll definitely treat you warmly. The group of veteran godly kings spoke one after another before leaving. They were still very enthusiastic and didn't speak ill of Chao De. That was because they clearly knew that as long as Chao De didn't die, he would definitely become a great expert after absorbing so much Tao fusion grass. Nearby, many evolvers realized that Chao De's harvest this time was too great. After the end of the Tao fusion gathering, he had become a great winner. The attitude of these godly kings toward him was enough to explain everything. Golden light blossomed, and the six-eared monkey race's ancestor disappeared right away. The place regained its tranquility. Chu Feng was at a loss. Should he run or not? If he ran now, he wouldn't be able to enter the revered 8 trigrams furnace. I'll stay for a few days and wait for the monkey to come out of seclusion. I'll see if I can go to the revered 8 trigrams furnace with him in the near future. Chu Feng thought to himself. He wanted to stay and take a look at the situation because he really wanted to enter the revered 8 trigrams furnace. After a small gathering with the monkey and Peng Wanli, someone came to find Chu Feng and told him that he had to move out of the Golden Body Battalion now. Chu Feng sighed. His realm had increased, so he needed to report to the Quasi-Sage Battalion. In reality, if he wanted to, he could directly break through now and enter the Sage Battalion in one go. However, He endured it because he didn't want to attract too much attention. He had already been in the limelight today. The environment of the quasi-sage battalion wasn't ordinary. Although the cold and hard land lacked vegetation, it emitted wisps of earth essence like immortal mist. Occasionally, there were some old trees that were mutant. They spat out fresh and tender leaves that flickered with green light. Sparse flower buds bloomed, and a sweet fragrance assailed the nostrils and refreshed the mind. Chu Feng had arrived and was sizing up the camp. There were tens of thousands of quasi-sages in this area alone. This was the eastern part of the quasi-sage battalion. If everyone was added up, there would be more than 200,000 quasi-sages. This is Chowda. He even dares to touch the Kuan dragon. Even Divine King Chi Feng didn't obtain as many creation substances as he did. After Chu Feng arrived, it immediately caused a commotion. Many quasi-sages stared at him as if they wanted to see a monster. All of them revealed strange expressions. He absorbed a lot of Dao fusion grass. Now that the distinguished meeting has just ended, there are still many great Dao fragments in his body. He definitely hasn't had time to refine them. Someone whispered with a tempting tone. What do you mean? Some people's hearts trembled slightly. The reason is very simple. If anything happens to Chowda, he'll be a great medicine. If we refine him, all the great Dao fragments in his body will belong to us because the essence of the Dao fusion grass is still in his body. It hasn't been completely refined into our own. Immediately, there was a slight commotion in the crowd in the distance. At the same time, Chu Feng felt a wave of hostility. He looked around. His divine senses were too sharp now. Someone wanted to kill him. Who had eaten a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? He had just ended the Dao Fusion Grand Meeting, and his name had shaken this place. He had just arrived at the quasi-sage area, yet someone dared to target him. Very soon, Chu Feng's pupils constricted. He saw some people wearing terrifying armor, but those armors looked very ordinary. His eyes were very sharp because he possessed the fiery eyes. Not long ago, it wasn't good for him to use it in front of the dozen or so divine kings. But here, his pupils secretly flickered with golden light. He naturally wasn't worried about being detected by the quasi-sage level evolvers. Chu Feng's heart trembled. Those armors looked ordinary, but they were actually refined from dragon scales. What kind of treasured armor was this? Upon closer inspection, it should be the scales of the dragon race that had wings and was shaped like a giant lizard. It was refined into rare armor. Chu Feng discovered that there were dozens of people hiding in the crowd here, and all of them were wearing this kind of armor. If he included those he hadn't discovered yet, there were presumably even more people. In addition, he also discovered some creatures wearing armor refined from rare and special metals. They were also hostile, and there were quite a number of such people. Blue veins appeared on Chu Feng's forehead. Were there people tired of living? Did they want to stop him in this kind of situation? In the distance, there were people whispering and sneering. Their expressions were cruel and callous. So what if he absorbed the essence of the Dao fusion grass? I'll crush him with my great power. It's useless no matter how strong he is. He will die a miserable death and become a laughingstock. Can you kill him? After all, he even crippled a saint like the Kuan Long. Don't mention the Kuan Long. His luck isn't good. He wasn't defeated in a head-on battle. Instead, he was ambushed by Chowda and was crippled. Two people were conversing in the dark. One of them was very confident, while the other was doubtful. One of them said, "So what if he's strong?" He's already incurred the dissatisfaction of the quasi-sage camp. Under such circumstances, even many Kuan dragons will be wiped out if they join forces, let alone Chowda. Can he fight 10,000 quasi-sages by himself? In the end, he'll be torn apart by others and the fortune substance in his body will be seized. In the distance, Chu Feng's expression was cold. His divine senses were too sharp and he could sense the movements of some quasi-sages. Although they were concealing it, the killing intent pervading the air was captured by him. Chapter 1234. The atmosphere in the quasi-sage camp wasn't good. It was tense and oppressive because someone wanted to kill Chu Feng. A cold glint flashed in the depths of his eyes. Come then. Let's see who kills who. He had to admit that the person in the dark was full of ambition and too daring. They clearly knew he wasn't to be trifled with, yet they still wanted to deal a fatal blow and get rid of him directly. It could only be said that the person who wanted to make a move was cold and domineering. He saw him as prey and instigated a large number of experts in the quasi-sage camp, wanting to succeed in one battle and crush him. Chu Feng slowed down his footsteps, and a layer of brilliance appeared on the surface of his body. He was indifferent and calm, ready to fight at any time. That was because there were more and more people wearing dragon-scale armors nearby. Evolvers draped in rare metals were also quietly gathering around. You guys want to attack me? Chu Feng said coldly. We want to exchange pointers, but we think we're not your match if we attack alone, someone said in the dark. You guys attack together. Chu Feng's voice was very cold. You said it yourself. Someone in the dark was excited and almost screamed. This saved them a lot of trouble. They didn't need to find excuses to attack together. Just one whetstone after another. Chu Feng was very calm and regarded these people as whetstones. In a large tent very far away in the quasi-sage camp, someone smiled and said, "Heh, the hunt is about to begin. Chowda doesn't have long to live." He was tall and had a head of red hair. His spotlessly white fingers held a sparkling wine cup with amber-like fine wine inside. The rich fragrance of the wine assailed the nostrils and made one feel intoxicated just by smelling it. Beside him was a white-haired youth with a grim smile on his face. He raised the delicate and warm wine cup in his hand and lightly clinked it with him. A clear and crisp sound rang out. The amber-like liquid splashed out from the two jade cups, but it was very viscous. It pulled out threads and was ultimately drawn back into the cup, leaving behind a rich wine fragrance in midair. Both of them were very calm and unhurried as they drank lightly and looked at the figure in the distance who was surrounded. He's about to die. Let the hunt begin, the red-haired youth said coldly. He began to watch the show, waiting for Chowda to be killed. The white-haired young man said calmly, "If it weren't for the stupid rules of this battlefield, with our status we could just give an order. He's just a wild cultivator. Even if he had 10 lives, his head would have been chopped off and fed to the dogs. Come, raise your cups and send Chowda off," the red-haired male said with a smile. His face carried happiness, as well as an indescribably bewitching expression. Ding! The wine glasses between the two quickly clinked together again. Both of them had grim smiles on their faces as they quietly waited for Chowda's tragic death. In the camp, the evolvers were densely packed. Some of them had already made their move, rushing towards Chu Feng with cold and emotionless expressions. Chu Feng didn't move from his spot, but his eyes shone with a terrifying light, shooting out 2 astonishing golden beams. At the same time, his hair fluttered even though there was no wind. Then, it danced violently in the air. In that instant, he was like a demonic god. His eyes were cold and his aura was intimidating. "All of you get over here," he rebuked lightly. Those people were alarmed, but they didn't stop. 2 among them rushed over with black spears in their hands and stabbed forward. The spears were extremely sharp, as if they came from hell and were filled with a dense and cold murderous aura. Black light erupted and flew out from the spears like 2 bolts of black lightning from the universe. It was too astonishing and distorted the void. These were 2 experts, well-known figures among quasi-saints. Their murderous power was intimidating. At this critical moment, Chu Feng moved. He attacked in an instant with incomparable courage. He grabbed the 2 spears and suddenly exerted force. With 2 snapping sounds, the 2 spears forged from rare metals were completely broken. But at this moment it wasn't just the 2 of them. A group of people in the surroundings also rushed over. They were all quasi-saints and all of them were expert. Not a single one of them was ordinary. At this moment, someone brandished his fist. Divine light erupted and struck until the void trembled. Someone brandished his blade. Resplendent chi rays flew out as if they were going to cut through the sky. Moreover, terrifying ear-piercing sounds were emitted. That was the vibration of energy. At the same time, someone's glabella shone as he unleashed a secret technique. Runes could be seen interweaving together like a river of stars, dazzling and intimidating. Rumble. All kinds of attacks and methods interweaved together like a dense and resplendent starry sky. It was as if the entire galaxy was falling down. That kind of grand aura and that kind of terrifying pressure made people suffocate. It was really as if the firmament was overturning. After all, these were dozens of quasi-saints attacking together. They fought with their physical bodies and unleashed their secret technique. They fused together to form a destructive storm. The void trembled and was about to be torn apart. Boom! At this moment, Chu Feng didn't escape because he was originally surrounded in the center. He went all out. Lightning interweaved and transformed into a sea of order that rushed in all directions. Lightning shuttled back and forth. This was a shock wave that originated from a peak quasi-saint. Chu Feng went crazy and threw caution to the wind. He wanted to use a group of quasi-saints to test himself. Qi. Divine light shot out and order vibrated. Chu Feng was like a sun. His entire body was emitting lightning that gushed out from his pores, from his 7 apertures, and even from his 4 limbs. In particular, the terrifying lightning runes between his fists blasted out, causing the void to resonate and tremble. It was extremely terrifying. In an instant, the people around him all screamed. Amidst the lightning and thunder, some people were struck and penetrated by the lightning, causing large amounts of blood to spurt out. At this moment, more than 20 people were sent flying. After being struck by the lightning, they were like weeds in a violent storm. They were almost snapped and uprooted in the end as they were sent flying. More than 20 people fell into a pool of blood because their bodies had been penetrated by Chu Feng's lightning rune. Blood splattered everywhere. It was just that tyrannical. Chu Feng stretched his body and unleashed his lightning fist to the extreme. He could attack from all over his body and his fists were even faster than lightning. A group of people was penetrated. At the same time, after this group of people landed on the ground, their wounds were charred black and there were electric arcs interweaving. Other than that, another group of people were also entangled by lightning. Their bodies trembled like bent shrimps, and it was difficult for them to stand upright. All of them staggered back, and even spat out electric arcs when they opened their mouth. Among everyone, the 2 people who were the first to attack were the most miserable. Half of their bodies had exploded and their lives were almost lost. How can he be so strong? Someone's voice was trembling. It was simply unbelievable. One had to know that there were more than 10 quasi-saints attacking at the same time. Although Chowda was very strong, he shouldn't be like this. He defeated 50 to 60 people in an instant. It was extremely terrifying and made people's hair stand on end. Everyone felt as if they were facing a prehistoric ferocious beast. This was too terrifying, causing their souls to tremble. They were all quasi-saints, but how could Chowda be strong to this extent? At this moment, Chu Feng stood in the middle of the field and didn't move. Golden beams shot out from his eyes as he looked down on everyone. He was more and more like a demonic god as he intimidated everyone present. Everyone realized that Chowda was much stronger than them. It was as if they weren't on the same plane. No wonder he could severely injure the Kuan Long, someone said with a trembling voice. Don't be afraid, don't scare yourself. The Kuan Long was ambushed by him while he was comprehending the Tao. If they were to fight head-on, the one who would die would be Chowda. Someone said loudly to boost the morale. In the distance, the white-haired youth in the silver tent said coldly, "He's very powerful." Not to mention quasi-saints, even saints would find it difficult to be his match. The red-haired youth revealed a cold gaze and said, "But he still has to die. Who does he think he is? The young Li Su? He dares to fight against hundreds and thousands of quasi-saints alone?" Roar. On the battlefield, Chu Feng let out a long roar and his aura became increasingly stronger. He tested the results of his cultivation and attacked without holding back. In an instant, he moved like a ghost. His movements were too fast. Amidst the terrifying golden fist imprints, more than 20 people flew up and were all pierced by him. They almost exploded. This was the result of his intentional control. He didn't want to massacre the quasi-saint camp. Otherwise, some people would definitely disintegrate and not even their corpses would remain. The sound of metal colliding could be heard. The evolvers wearing dragon-scale armor in the surroundings moved out and attacked together. There were more than 70 of them. In addition, there were also evolvers wearing other terrifying armors. All of them were beings at the late-stage quasi-saint realm. They were uniformly mobilizing their secret treasures, divine chains of order, and other things to deal a fatal blow to Chu Feng. Apart from them, there were also hundreds of people behind them. Their bodies were glowing as they used secret techniques. The saints moved in unison and the nearby quasi-saints joined forces to target him. "Kill!" Chu Feng roared. There were so many people in the hundreds and they were all launching an attack. The brilliance flickered like the starry sky and the stars poured down in torrents. The pressure on him was too great. It was impossible for him to wait for them to kill him. He finally took the initiative and soared into the sky like a vicious beast in human form to evade these dazzling light beams of order. Boom! At the same time, the drawn-out sound of a bell reverberated outside his body. In addition, it was accompanied by the terrifying sound of thunder. He condensed a large bell with lightning and covered his body to resist everyone. Clang! The sound of the bell was deafening and wanted to tear the void apart. It could be seen that there were so many people on the ground attacking together. When all kinds of light beams flew over, the large bell condensed from lightning was struck until it caved in and the lightning runes almost collapsed. Who does he think he is? Does he really think he can move unhindered among the quasi-saints? The red-haired youth sneered in the distance as he quietly waited for Chowda to be defeated and killed. However, that large bell swelled up again at the critical moment. All the caved-in areas swelled up again and the cracked areas were also mended. Chu Feng imperceptibly used the humanoid monarch's blood to form a golden domain. It intertwined with the lightning and fused with the large bell. Outsiders couldn't see it. After that, everyone saw that this group of people seemed to be imprisoned by an invisible force field. They were distorted and maintained strange postures as they floated up. Boom! After that, hundreds of people screamed miserably as they were sent flying. Some of them had lost an arm, some a leg, and their bodies were mutilated. In the distance, the red-haired youth's expression changed. He was just saying that Chowda was courting death, but now there was a result. Hundreds of people couldn't trap and kill Chowda. A large number of people were sent flying by him and spurted out large mouthfuls of blood. This kind of scene was horrifying. A quasi-saint wasn't fighting against 10, but hundreds of quasi-saints, yet it looked very easy. Everyone, it's time to make a move. You see, Chowda is just a wild cultivator. He became so strong just because he obtained a large amount of Dao Fusion grass essence. We can also become so strong after we refine him and extract the Dao Fusion grass essence. The red-haired man transmitted his voice secretly to bewitch them. That was because he couldn't help it anymore. He really wanted to get rid of Chowda immediately and couldn't delay any longer. At the same time, the people he found and the death warriors he arranged also began to transmit their voices to the quasi-saint camp, bragging about the terror of the Dao Fusion grass. A wisp of Dao Fusion grass essence is enough to create a great expert, and Chowda has a lot of it. His combat strength is obvious to all. What are we waiting for? Let's get rid of him and seize the creation substance contained in the Dao grass. Found you. At this moment, a golden light flickered in the depths of Chu Feng's eyes. That was the fiery eyes being secretly used. He had discovered the red-haired man. After that, he suddenly leaped up like a meteor and charged over. His entire body was dazzling as if he was going to smash over. Chapter 12:35. Chu Feng streaked across the earth like a comet, bringing with him astonishing energy as he swooped down. His face revealed an ice-cold killing intent as he recognized that man. The red-haired youth was Qi Meng, the nine-headed bird. Last time, Qi Meng, who was at the golden arhat level, had his 8 heads knocked off by Chu Feng in succession. It could be said that he had suffered a crushing defeat and missed the opportunity to participate in the Dao blending meeting. Today, Qi Meng the nine-headed bird emitted the aura of a quasi-saint, but he didn't feel any joy. On the contrary, he was filled with hatred and his face was somewhat distorted. This was because he had advanced passively. In order to try to regrow the other 8 heads, his race had thought of all kinds of methods and concocted all kinds of prescriptions for him. In the end, he had broken through, but the 8 heads were lost forever and never regrown again. Every member of the 9-headed bird race had 9 lives. This was their most heaven-defying aspect, but now, he had lost this kind of foundation. However, he soon calmed down and thought of everything that had happened today. He believed that Chowda was finished. Even if he was lucky enough not to die on the spot, he would soon face the most severe situation of death. Chu Feng was coming. He was just a defeated opponent in front of him, yet he dared to plot against him? So what if his methods were sinister and all kinds of killing moves were used? He just had to explode. In his heart, he needed this kind of battle. He wanted to test the results of his cultivation. Moreover, so what if he really pierced through the sky? He would just leave and give up on the opportunity to self-immolate in the Taishang terrains and directly leave this place. Boom! Like a meteor crashing down from the sky, the momentum was too terrifying and shocking. Chu Feng's whole body was glowing. At this moment, he was swallowing and spitting out lightning. He was using the thunderous breathing technique, which was quite compatible with the profound mysteries of the lightning fist. Even the void was distorted by the pressure of his body. He charged over with this kind of power, just like the barbaric charge of a prehistoric demonic rhinoceros. That kind of creature could even shatter stars at will. The spiraling telepathic light beam could sever the galaxy. However, at this moment, over 100 beams of light suddenly lit up beside Qi Meng the nine-headed bird. Those were beams of sword radiance. They were too resplendent and rushed into the sky. Over 100 experts, all clad in crimson armor, each holding a thick sword core in their hands, hacked towards the sky in front of them together, slashing towards Chu Feng. Over 100 people appeared abruptly. They were one entity, neat and uniform. Even though there were 100 great swords in their hands, it was as if a single divine sword hacked over, too orderly. Chi chi chi. The sword light was like a rainbow, and the sword chi was like a boundless ocean. Both of them shot over at the same time, and the sky was filled with dazzling light. This was too terrifying. It engulfed Chu Feng, the fearless battalion of the nine-headed bird race. Someone cried out in alarm, extremely shocked. This was the nine-headed bird race's death-sworn army, known as the Fearless Battalion. Every single one of them had nothing to fear, and since ancient times, they had already slaughtered their way to fame. It was rumored that if they joined forces, they would be able to kill a group of evolvers of a higher level, and it would be a crushing defeat. This is the elite Fearless Battalion formed by the descendants of the clan and the orphans with shocking aptitudes they adopted. They're even stronger, and although they're all at the quasi-saint realm, it wouldn't be a problem for them to kill over 10 saints. Someone muttered in a low voice, greatly shaken. The nine-headed bird race was actually willing to put in so much effort. This kind of elite fearless battalion formed by descendants of the clan and the orphans with shocking aptitudes wouldn't be mobilized easily. Normally, they would carefully temper them and help them grow steadily. Once they were mobilized, it would be a major event and a decisive battle. Over 100 rays of sword light were about to tear the sky apart as they slashed toward Chu Feng. At this moment, he swooped down, covering a distance of several hundred meters with a single leap. His speed was too terrifying, but in the end, he was obstructed by the sword chi. If it were an ordinary person, he would have been torn to pieces without any suspense. These sword chi were enough to kill Tencent. This was the sword domain. The race's elite fearless battalion had become one entity, and they had actually activated a terrifying sword domain. Wherever the sword chi passed, there was nothing it couldn't destroy. This was an incomparably terrifying domain of destruction. This wasn't like the Little Yin realm, where some people could open up a domain with their physical bodies. In the Yang realm, it was too difficult to open up a sword domain at this level. With so many people working together, the difficulty was even greater because their auras were different. However, when their essence, chi, and spirit overlapped, the sword domain they opened was also the most terrifying. At this crucial moment, Chu Feng's expression also changed. These 100 swordsmen were much stronger than those people just now, and they posed a great threat to him. Rumble! The thunder bell rumbled and clanged outside his body. Moreover, it was a set of 18 bells that overlapped with each other to protect his true body. At the same time, his gold man-monarch blood was awakened, and he released his unique man-monarch domain, which fused with the golden thunder bell to protect himself. Most importantly, he used the wonderful 7 treasures technique this time. Inside the golden bell, the earth attribute and yin attribute energies overlapped and originated from the reincarnation earth and the netherworld, forming a terrifying pressure. Boom! In an instant, over 100 rays of unavoidable sword light slashed over. They broke through the 17 thunderbells as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, and almost pierced through Chu Feng's defense. At the same time, this shock made Chu Feng's chi and blood churn, and he almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. His face was bright red, and his body shook violently. However, in the end, he still withstood it. The last bell was covered in cracks and didn't shatter. The man-monarch domain outside his body was very sturdy and emitted golden light. At the same time, the power of the wonderful 7 treasures technique was still revolving and didn't stop. I was wondering how strong you were. Turns out you're only this strong. Chu Feng shouted. Then, accompanied by a roar, he went crazy. He swung his fists and attacked the elite fearless battalion members with all his might. Next, everyone was stunned. From where Chu Feng was, the thunder cauldron, lightning pagoda, furnace with arcs of lightning lingering around it, and all kinds of weapons flew out. They were all formed by golden lightning, and all of them shot toward everyone. A huge explosion instantly occurred in this area. Not only did these thunder weapons contain the profound meaning of lightning, but they were also supported by the wonderful 7 treasures technique. This was terrifying. They overlapped and exploded nearby. It could be seen that the 100 elites of the fearless battalion, who were capable of killing saints, completely collapsed, and all kinds of miserable cries rang out. Large swords were broken, bodies were torn apart, and sword domains were collapsing. The 9-headed bird Chi Meng was dumbfounded. Even this was possible? He had already overestimated Chowda, but now it seemed that this opponent was even more abnormal than he imagined. He became more and more resentful. Chowda made him lose 8 heads, broke his undying body, and destroyed his elite fearless battalion like this. This truly made his hair stand on end. Not to mention him, even the pupils of some old fellows who came after hearing the news contracted. They felt that Chowda was too ridiculous and too shocking. What was he doing? He charged into the 9-headed bird race's fearless battalion and rampaged about. He seemed to be cast from gold and was too dazzling. He punched one person at a time, and some people lost half of their bodies before being sent flying. With a sweep of his leg, a group of people was sent flying. Their bodies were full of cracks, and those people were like delicate porcelain that was about to explode. Did you guys see that? Chowda's strength is unimaginable. It's all because he swallowed a large amount of Dao fusion grass. If we really let him bleed and drink a mouthful, it'll be enough for our strength to increase greatly. Right now, Chowda is a heavenly medicine, a true primer of great Dao. Someone shouted in the dark, trying to bewitch people. However, did Chu Feng care? He had no fear at all. He killed his way over and crushed many quasi-saints. He targeted the nine-headed bird Chi Meng and charged over. At this moment, the nine-headed bird Chi Meng's heart was trembling. He felt very upset. This powerful enemy's strength made him jealous and resentful. Go! At this moment, the white-haired youth grabbed him and turned around to leave this place. Behind them, a large number of death-worn soldiers were mobilized. Although they had joined the Harmony Prefecture camp, they were more obedient to their clans and were attacking Chu Feng. Even though they were all quasi-saints, under Chu Feng's powerful attacks, these people were still badly mutilated and blasted away. Chu Feng brandished his ultimate fist, and the result was shocking. No one could block it. Roar. In the end, he let out a loud roar, and the people near him coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. In the end, their bodies were torn into pieces and directly exploded in front of him. Everyone was shocked by his demon-like attitude. That was a quasi-saint, yet he exploded with a single roar. How powerful was his sound wave! Without a doubt, his combat strength was peerless at this level. This made all the quasi-saints despair. Is this the power of the Dao fusion grass? Could it really create an undefeatable being like Li Su, destined to be invincible for life? At this moment, an older figure's voice was trembling as he said this. Even they were doubtful and felt that the nine-headed bird Chi Meng's words were reasonable. The reason why Chowda was so powerful was completely because of the Dao fusion grass. He had absorbed too much and was equivalent to a tangible carrier of the Dao. This Chowda is a human-shaped great medicine. His blood contains fragments of the great Dao, his bones are engraved with orderly patterns, and his entire body is filled with traces of the Dao. He's not just a great medicine, he's a heavenly medicine. He's almost equivalent to a small part of the Dao fusion grass. At this moment, some divine kings rushed over after hearing the news. They crossed the camps and appeared here. After seeing this scene, their eyes were gloomy as they spoke. From the older figures in the camps to the young divine king evolvers, their emotions were all up and down. They were greatly moved, and there was a blazing light in the depths of their eyes. Chi Meng's words had fermented in the end and had a certain effect. Many people believed that Chowda's rise and his invincible attitude were directly linked to the Dao fusion grass. Ha ha ha! Chi Meng fled and rushed out of the quasi-saint camp, but he was laughing. He knew that his words had an effect and had released the demons in many people's hearts. Even divine kings were moved, let alone the others. Chowda is dead for sure, he said coldly on the way. The most terrifying thing in this world wasn't power, but the human heart. He believed that this time, he had lured Chowda to attack with all his strength and had shocked many experts. Their hearts were no longer calm and dark waves had arisen. He believed that there would be someone who couldn't help but make a move. Whether it was in the open or in the dark, they would capture Chu Feng and refine him as a heavenly medicine. It was to the extent that someone might directly kill Chu Feng, drink his blood that contained great Dao fragments, and devour his flesh. This was Chi Meng's intention. It was best if he could directly kill Chowda here. He would then go and extract the essence of the Dao fusion grass himself and make Chowda busy for nothing. And once he failed and couldn't kill Chowda, it wasn't a big deal either. That would only further prove Chowda's strength. It was all because the Dao fusion grass was too heaven-defying. It would release the demons in people's hearts and make them fight to kill Chowda in secret. It could be said that Qi Meng's intentions were malicious. He had long since determined that no matter what the result was, Chowda wouldn't be able to survive and was destined to die in the next few days. Chu Feng blasted apart those who stood in his way with a punch. Then, he opened his mouth and shattered a few quasi-saints with a roar. No one dared to stop his footsteps anymore. He chased after them to kill Qi Meng. He naturally knew the nine-headed bird's intentions. It was sinister and ruthless, but he wasn't afraid. He was prepared to unleash a massacre and then turn around to leave with a wave of his hand. He chased after them and discovered that the nine-headed bird, Qi Meng, and the white-haired man had charged into the saint camp. "Get out of the way!" Chu Feng shouted loudly. There were 10 saints blocking his path ahead. "Impudent!" A saint shouted coldly and rebuked Chu Feng in front of everyone. "Who do you think you are? Do you really think you're invincible under the heavens? Do you think you can kill whoever you want? This is the saint camp and you can't behave atrociously. Your current realm isn't high enough and you haven't reached the saint level. You don't have the right to step foot here." Another saint's voice wasn't loud, but it was very cold as he berated Chu Feng. Chu Feng was very calm and said, "I don't think I'm invincible. I'm only chasing after scum. If they can enter, why can't I?" He pointed at Qi Meng and the white-haired man who had fled into the saint camp. "They are them and you are you." "Stop," a saint said coldly. Chu Feng flew into a rage. He had already restrained himself very much, but this was clearly differential treatment. These people wanted to protect Qi Meng and the others. "You want to protect Qi Meng by blocking my path?" he asked. A saint said, "Leave immediately. This place doesn't welcome you. With us here, you can't behave atrociously. You can't kill whoever you want here." Chapter 12:36. Several saints blocked the way and spoke ill of Chu Feng. They directly said that they wanted to protect Qi Meng, so what could you, Chowda, do? Chu Feng's eyes were gushing with flames. These people were truly too arrogant and their hostility was too intense. They were actually targeting him like this. He believed that he had no enmity with these people and that there was no karma between them. Apparently, these were saints who had been bribed by Qi Meng and had been waiting here to ambush him. Especially now, everyone was saying that Chowda's sudden rise and strength was all because of the Dao fusion grass. This made these saints jealous. Therefore, they lined up in a row and blocked the way. "All of you, get out of the way," Chu Feng said sternly and gave them a final warning. His emotions were fluctuating and his killing intent surged like raging waves. "Who gave you the confidence to berate a saint?" A silver-haired saint spoke. This was someone from the Silver Wolf race. After transforming into human form, his hawk-like attitude was intimidating and extremely domineering. The other 9 saints also revealed killing intent. Some had cold smiles on their faces, while others had mocking smiles on their faces. There were even some who were looking down on Chowda. They naturally had confidence since they dared to block the way here. That was because they had already understood that the reason the number 1 saint, Kuan Long, was heavily injured was because of Chowda's sneak attack. There was no direct confrontation at all, especially since they were holding great killing weapons in their hands. Now, not to mention Chowda, who was at the quasi-saint realm, they would even dare to kill an evolver higher than the saint realm. Chu Feng moved and directly charged over to kill his way over. His body was overflowing with multicolored light and a resplendent divine halo enveloped him. Vigorous energy erupted like a volcano. Divine light shot out from all the pores on his body. This was the release of his potential. Faint golden blood energy lay dormant in his body and was incomparably terrifying. "Die!" the silver-haired saint rebuked. He held a pitch-black scroll in his hand and directly threw it at Chu Feng. For a moment, The entire sky was covered in a dense black mass and fell into boundless darkness. This scroll covered the sky and black mist poured down in torrents, covering the entire sky. It was so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. The map of hell? Someone cried out in alarm. This was a great killing weapon, and it was said that there was no way out once one entered it. Once one fell into it, it would be like entering the underworld, and one would be corroded by the energy, turning into a pool of ice-cold blood. It was rumored that this great killing weapon from the underworld was related to the reincarnation hunters. Ordinary people couldn't refine it. Without a doubt, this was an incomplete map. The true map of the underworld of darkness was used to deal with important figures. It was extremely terrifying, and it was impossible to bring it into the camp of saints. Even so, it wasn't something that a secondary saint could contend against. If a saint were to be sucked in, he would also turn into a pool of blood. Unfortunately, he had encountered Chu Feng, a person who had even traversed the real netherworld and stepped into the ultimate land of reincarnation. He really wasn't afraid of this kind of energy. Indeed, when darkness enveloped this expanse of the heavens and the earth, it caused many people to tremble, and they were practically unable to move. It was because there was baleful and darkness power inside the picture scroll. When it spread out, it made the creatures of the Yang realm shiver with fear. Even their souls were about to be frozen and their bodies were about to turn into pus and blood. However, Chu Feng was fine. After he was enveloped by the picture scroll, he was a little astonished. This was the so-called great killing weapon? However, when he was slightly absent-minded and in a bit of a daze, many people didn't understand. They thought that he had been imprisoned and became a person in the picture, unable to move. Some people sighed lightly. It was a pity that Chowda had actually encountered the fragment of the underworld map. One had to know that if this kind of dark ancient weapon wasn't damaged, it had once captured and killed a heavenly venerable who carried the memories of his past life. Even though it's only an incomplete fragment now, it's enough to kill a secondary saint. Chowda is finished? Some people cried out in alarm. Just now, Chowda's imposing manner was like a rainbow as he pierced through the secondary saint's camp and rushed here, but in the blink of an eye, he was going to be executed. In the distance, the nine-headed bird Chi Meng laughed, but it was a little sinister. There was also coldness and cruelty in his delight. He rejoiced that his opponent was going to die in the end. However, he felt that it was a bit of a pity. The essence of the Dao fusion grass contained in Chowda's body was most likely going to be divided among many people. He couldn't enjoy it alone. Chowda, do you really think that you can run amok just because you have potential and exceptional talent? You're just a wild cultivator without the backing of a great clan. Where did you get the confidence to challenge me? I can easily find a reason to kill you. Chi Meng vented the dissatisfaction in his heart. Only he himself knew how difficult it was to kill Chowda in this damned camp to abide by those damned rules. Crack! All of a sudden, a crisp sound rang out like a piece of paper being torn apart. In the sky, a crack appeared on that dark underworld map. The person in the painting moved. He actually walked out and swooped down. The Silver Wolf Saint originally had a smile on his face because he thought that he was going to get rid of Chowda. In the end, he didn't expect that Chowda would attack at the first moment. This caused the expression on his face to freeze. The other 9 saints were the same. Just now, some people ridiculed, some were contemptuous, and some were smiling faintly. They all thought that they could easily take down Chowda and that the outcome was already set. There were even some among them who spoke up and asked the Silver Wolf Saint to show mercy and not really refine Chowda into pus and blood. That way, there would be no way to extract the essence of this human-shaped great medicine. Who would have expected that Chowda wasn't restricted at all? He directly broke out of the painting and attacked. Bang! The distance was too close. There was no time to dodge. The Silver Wolf Saint's face suffered a kick. Chu Feng stomped solidly on it. This blow was too heavy. Ah! The silver-haired man screamed, and almost came out of his wolf body. Crack! Chu Feng followed and twisted his neck. With a raise of his hand, his soul light was extinguished. Rumble! Chu Feng went crazy. Golden lightning surrounded his body and blasted towards the others. It swept over powerfully and targeted everyone. Someone spat out a large mouthful of blood. Because it was too sudden, it was really difficult to dodge. The main reason was that the Silver Wolf Saint thought that the outcome was set. He summoned that pitch-black painting scroll down from midair and approached his palm. The distance was too close. Therefore, when Chu Feng broke out of the painting, he directly came to their side. In addition, at this moment, he used the lightning fist. It was as swift and violent as lightning. The fist light was too fierce and too fast. These people couldn't dodge it. In an instant, 4 or 5 people were hit. Even the bodies of saints were penetrated and covered in blood. Kill. The others were in an incomparably sorry state. They dodged and were hit by lightning, but their injuries weren't serious. They immediately counterattacked. However, what made these people horrified was that Chao Denning fought them head-on. He was unbelievably strong, and the toughness of his body was even stronger than theirs. How the hell did he cultivate like this? The physique of a creature that was one realm lower than them actually far surpassed theirs. In the fierce collision, Chu Feng didn't hold back at all. He used the wonderful 7 treasures technique to kill them. This was because he saw that there was a pitch-black painting scroll in their hand. It was still the map of the Netherworld, but the area was slightly larger. In order to kill him, the related parties were really willing to bleed and provide this kind of ancient artifact fragment. Chu Feng didn't want to be a person in the painting again. Therefore, his counterattack was especially fierce. He grasped 2 kinds of rare materials. When he used the wonderful 7 treasures technique, he used earth and Yin attribute energy. The 2 entangled and blasted out like a spiral. Its power was extremely strong. Even though they were saints, these people still groaned in the end. Their souls were injured. Poof! Then, they were torn apart by the power of the spiral and finally exploded. Chu Feng rushed over and killed his way over. The 10 saints joined forces to stop him but failed. 6 died and 4 were seriously injured. He rushed toward the 9-headed bird Chi Meng in the distance, ready to kill him. "Stop him!" the 9-headed bird shouted. Obviously, he wanted nothing more than to kill Chu Feng immediately. There were people from his clan in this alliance of saints, as well as death warriors he had bribed and other experts he had bewitched. At this moment, many people believed that Chao De was a human-shaped heavenly medicine. His blood contained fragments of the great Tao, which was equivalent to half a Tao fusion grass. If they could capture him, they could replace him. Taking a step back, being able to drink a mouthful of Chao De's blood could increase their strength. It was simply a piece of immortal meat. But many people didn't move because they could see that Chao De was dangerous. He was a beast in human form. There were also many people who moved. The evolvers here were all saints and they were all expert. It was very terrifying for them to swarm over like this. The pressure that Chu Feng encountered here was much more severe than when he was in the quasi-saint camp. There was killing intent in his heart, and his emotions fluctuated violently. Then, his expression changed, and his pupils rapidly contracted as he shot out a terrifying golden beam of light. After he became angry, the golden humanoid monarch blood surged. He couldn't hold back and was about to break through and advance into the saint domain. "No, I haven't passed the quasi-saint heavenly tribulation and haven't used the might of heaven and earth to temper my true body. If I break through like this, it'll be a waste." Chu Feng forcefully suppressed himself and didn't want to break through immediately. If people knew about this, they would definitely be stunned. They could only sigh that such a freak was really rare. In the Yang realm, the heavenly tribulation was very terrifying. Many people couldn't even avoid it. Rumble! The next moment Chu Feng sensed something. Blood-colored light surged above his head, and scarlet clouds appeared. Then, the terrifying heavenly tribulation descended. A bolt of blood-colored lightning struck down, causing him to stagger and his hair to become disheveled. Then, a black cloud flew over and a black light descended. Black and lifeless lightning struck him, and almost sent him flying. In a split second, tribulation clouds of many different colors appeared and bombarded Chu Feng indiscriminately. In the surroundings, all the saints ran away. They didn't rush over because this quasi-saint heavenly tribulation actually threatened saints. It made their hair stand on end, and they felt a chill run down their spines. This kind of heavenly tribulation is rarely seen since ancient times. It's too strong and it's enough to kill saints. Someone cried out involuntarily. Then, people attributed this kind of scene to the Tao melting grass. Now, as long as Chowda had a special performance, they would think that it was caused by Chowda absorbing the Tao melting grass. Rumble. Blood-colored light drowned out heaven and earth. That blood-colored lightning targeted Chu Feng's physical body and fell continuously. Crack. That black lightning specifically destroyed Chu Feng's soul light. It made him highly concentrated and nervous, and he was ready for battle. Clouds of various colors abruptly appeared between the heaven and earth. Terrifying bolts of lightning rained down and covered Chu Feng. This is almost comparable to the strongest quasi-saint heavenly tribulation in history, right? Even the divine kings felt a chill in their hearts after seeing this scene. They were bewildered and bewildered. In reality, who among them had seen the strongest heavenly tribulation in history? They had only read some records in the personal letters of their predecessors. None of them had seen it with their own eyes. Therefore, even if they were somewhat suspicious now, no one could be sure what level of heavenly tribulation Chowda was currently transcending. It's the best opportunity to kill him now that he's preoccupied with his own affairs. Nine-headed bird instigated, instructing people to kill him. There was a large group of saints here. If they joined forces to kill him in their territory, Chi Meng believed that a quasi-saint like Chu Feng would have to die with a grievance no matter how strong he was. Indeed, someone attacked. They took out the dragon phoenix scissors, which transformed into a black true dragon and a blood-colored phoenix. They crisscrossed and cut toward Chowda. This was another terrifying killing weapon. At the very least, it was a terrifying secret treasure that even saints would find it very strenuous to activate as it consumed an extreme amount of energy. Clang! Even in the midst of a heavenly tribulation, Chu Feng was still very vigilant. He immediately discovered the black-red light and struck out with a punch, sending the dragon phoenix scissors flying. "Do you all want to die?" shouted Chu Feng. His eyes were cold and emotionless as he looked through the blood-colored lightning and the black electric light at the evolvers who had attacked him. He then stared at Chi Meng in the distance. Then, he charged over. Even though he was transcending a heavenly tribulation, he still wanted to pursue and kill his enemy. Boom! The saints dispersed in an uproar. They didn't want to be caught in a heavenly tribulation. This kind of lightning could obviously put them in a dead end. Chu Feng didn't pursue them either. He was now covered in blood and didn't feel very good. He didn't know if this kind of heavenly tribulation could be considered the strongest heavenly tribulation in the quasi-saint realm, but it definitely surpassed what he had experienced in the past by a lot. He almost couldn't bear it anymore. Rumble! Amidst the blinding light, at the last moment, 81 bolts of colorful heavenly lightning suddenly descended. They seemed to contain wisps of chaotic chi, and they all blasted onto Chu Feng's body. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. His whole body was tattered and almost exploded. It's over. Chu Feng raised his head and looked at the sky. Rumble! He rapidly used the humanoid monarch's blood. His whole body glowed, and he immediately healed his injured body. His whole body was resplendent, and his muscles instantly took a turn for the better. He was filled with explosive masculine power. Then, He stared at Qi Meng and the others. Chapter 12:37. Chu Feng's aura was becoming stronger, and the activity of all his cells had increased to a terrifying degree. His entire body was glowing, and some mucus was discharged from his pores. His metabolism was too violent. He absorbed the free energy between heaven and earth to build a more powerful and perfect body, and to expel impurities. He was advancing toward the Saint Realm. Everyone was shocked. Chowda had just passed the quasi-sage tribulation, and now he was about to advance into the Saint Realm? He didn't even need to accumulate or prepare carefully. He was going to break through just like that? It was extremely freakish. Suddenly, Chu Feng's heart tightened and his scalp tingled. He suddenly raised his head and almost cursed out loud. The terrifying heavenly tribulation and the densely packed lightning were like a mountain torrent or the Milky Way breaching its dike. They poured down from the heavens and attacked his body. Hadn't the quasi-sage tribulation ended? He really wanted to curse out loud. He was just about to break through to the Saint Realm when the heavenly tribulation came again. He forcefully held his breath and almost suffered internal injuries. The heavenly tribulation this time was even more terrifying. Chu Feng took a deep breath and stopped his breakthrough. He wanted to resist this last great tribulation perfectly. Every time he went on a lightning expedition, it was actually a baptism for his true body. He would become even stronger after he got through it. Rumble. This time, there were a total of 108 bolts of lightning. They were brightly colored, ranging from scarlet to black and then to others. The lightning was concentrated, and 100 bolts of lightning struck him. Chu Feng forcefully endured it. His whole body cracked open, and blood splattered everywhere. His bones were almost exposed. He thought he was done, but in the end, hundreds of bolts of lightning descended from the void and struck his body at the same time. This repeated over and over again. There were a total of 10 times, and Chu Feng almost became a human-shaped skeleton. His flesh and blood were all struck until they withered. Someone secretly swallowed and said with a trembling voice, "Don't tell me this is the strongest heavenly tribulation. It hasn't appeared in many years since ancient times. Is the Dao fusion grass so heaven-defying? Are we really going to create another Li Su or the martial madman? This is too freakish." While everyone was shocked, their eyes were also exceptionally red. This was the Saint Battalion, and many saints were staring at Chowda with flickering eyes. What a great opportunity! Do you all see? Chowda is about to become a dried corpse, and right now, he is at his weakest. His seriously injured body is full of great Dao fragments. Do you all see? Symbols are flickering, clearly visible. Qi Meng shouted again, startling everyone awake, tempting the saints to take action. Indeed, everyone could see that Chowda was very weak, and there were order runes circulating within his withered body. It was extremely mystical. Someone attacked Chu Feng with the intent to kill. Chu Feng's face was cold as he dodged the attack. At the same time, he stared at the void, afraid that lightning would appear again. Is this really the strongest heavenly tribulation? Chu Feng wasn't too sure himself, but he felt that it was most likely the case. Otherwise, why would it happen so many times? If it was someone else, they would have been struck to death long ago. Rumble. After waiting for a while and dodging the attacks of a few saints, Chu Feng erupted, vigorous life force blossoming in his body, nourishing it. He was sure that the heavenly tribulation had disappeared, and then he began to break through. For a moment, the might of a saint swept out like a vast and mighty river and instantly spread out, shaking the entire Saint Battalion. This time, there was no lightning, no heavenly tribulation, and Chu Feng advanced safely. His body was too dazzling, and accompanied by a rain of light, his skeleton-like withered body swelled up, absorbing the wandering energy particles and nourishing his body. At the same time, his strength rose by a large margin. Boom! He attacked immediately. In the rain of light, in the divine multicolored light, he seemed to be ascending as he attacked the person who had just attacked him. Of course, he had long since locked onto Qi Meng. "Join forces and kill him," someone shouted. However, even more saints scattered. What kind of joke was this? This guy couldn't be provoked when he was a quasi-saint, and now that he was in the same realm as them, who could be a match for him? As expected, Chu Feng tore through them as easily as breaking dry weed. Bang! A saint took a punch from him, and his entire body exploded. "Go to hell!" Chu Feng shouted, his hair flying in disarray, and the golden blood was restrained. When he opened his mouth, the sound waves were too terrifying, causing the bodies of those who had been heavily injured to crack and become full of wounds. Then they shattered with a puff. Right now, he was like a great demon king sweeping across everything around him. Anyone who dared to attack him would be blasted into a mess. If they weren't dead, they were heavily injured. Everyone was shocked. He was actually so powerful. This is the aura of a great saint? Legend had it that after breaking through to the saint realm, there was a type of person who far surpassed other saints at the same level, and could be revered as a great saint. It was rumored that this kind of creature usually either overcame the most powerful heavenly tribulation, or had special opportunities, causing their strength to be too abnormal, terrifying to the point that it made people at the same level despair. For a moment, many people trembled. Then, those who participated in the attack, who were lucky enough to survive, all fled, not daring to stay. "Where do you think you're going?" Chu Feng chased. "Impudent!" someone shouted. A middle-aged man appeared, blocking Chu Feng's path. He was the person in charge of this camp, a quasi-divine king. "I think the impudent one is you. Why didn't you come out to stop them earlier, watching as they surrounded and attacked Chowda?" The six-eared macaque race's eldest brother Mi Hong appeared, standing in the horizon, his gaze cold and deep as he watched this place, watching this quasi-divine king closely. Immediately, this quasi-divine king frowned, feeling restraining fear, not daring to take action. At this time, many people in the various camps were alarmed, countless people paying attention to this place. Chu Feng's gaze was deep, long preparing for the worst, preparing to use a great killing weapon to get rid of an extremely important figure at any time, also preparing to run at any time. Since that quasi-divine king was berated, not daring to move randomly, Chu Feng naturally wouldn't stop, chasing after Qi Meng. "Kill him!" At this time, the nine-headed bird Qi Meng transmitted sound, roaring inwardly. He was hysterical, extremely anxious. That was because he had a feeling that if he didn't kill Chowda today, his race would be in great trouble in the future, even to the extent of being exterminated. This was an instinctive feeling, and it made him feel cold from head to toe. As such, he decided to break the rules and not follow the rules of this place, asking someone in the dark to kill Chowda. Even if he lost most of his life after being exposed, or even completely died, he didn't care. "We have to kill Chowda, we can't give him the chance to leave this place," Qi Meng shouted. His heart was pounding. Today, he had witnessed Chowda's heaven-defying power, and he definitely couldn't allow a tiger to grow in his bosom. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to kill this person. In the dark, a few figures appeared, surpassing the saint realm. There were people at the illumination realm, and there were also divine beings. They attacked together, wanting to kill Chu Feng here. Without a doubt, Qi Meng had gone mad, and he had to send Chu Feng on his way. Boom! At this moment, a person appeared in the void. Divine King Li Jiuxiao appeared, and he attacked powerfully. It was only a punch, but it pierced through the sky, and the light was too intense. Those people didn't even have time to scream, and then they turned into ashes in midair, all of them dead. Naturally, Chu Feng wouldn't waste this opportunity. His body turned into a golden rainbow, and he used the power of a great saint as he swooped down towards nine-headed bird. "Die!" One of the leaders of the saint camp, The quasi-divine king, who had wanted to attack earlier, moved to stop Chu Feng from killing nine-headed bird Qi Meng. At the same time, he attacked him with the intention of killing Chu Feng. The nine-headed clan has infiltrated this place so seriously. It's too vile, and you dare to act like this. This time, it was Mi Hong who attacked. With a boom, he appeared in front of the quasi-divine king and blocked his path. He turned into a giant golden ape, and with a rumble, he stomped the quasi-divine king to death. There was a huge gap between a divine king and a quasi-divine king, especially when Mi Hong was a heaven-defying divine king. At this moment, Chu Feng was like a beam of light as he killed his way over, chasing after Qi Meng. Nine-headed bird's soul almost left his body. He didn't hesitate to go crazy, breaking the rules to have someone kill Chowda. In the end, he still failed, and the other party had already caught up to him. The most terrifying thing was that Chowda was now a saint, and his strength was even more astonishing than before, far exceeding his estimations. Chasing after him became even easier. Qi Meng coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. He lowered his head and saw a hand reach out from his chest. After Chowda chased after him, he pierced through his back and crushed his heart. Gotcha! Chu Feng's other hand reached out, twisting his neck. This time, Qi Meng screamed. He knew he was going to die. He had previously had 8 heads exploded, and he lost his undying body. Now, he was about to be killed by Chu Feng. As for the life substitution talisman, it was already useless. Chu Feng had long researched how to deal with it. Bang! Chu Feng attacked again, shattering Qi Meng and making him explode. Then, he grabbed the white-haired youth that had always been with Qi Meng. Don't kill me, I don't care who you are. Chu Feng released a light shout. With a pring sound, a fist blasted this person apart, turning him into a bloody mist. Chowda, you dare kill the innocent, unleashing a great slaughter in your own camp. Your crimes are unforgivable, you must be executed. At this time, a terrifying voice shouted out, shaking the sky dome. Natural laws immediately appeared, order interweaving, the scene too terrifying. That was an elder, scarlet hair fluttering about. He had 9 heads. Even though he was humanoid, Chu Feng immediately understood that this was the 9-headed bird race's old ancestor. In his surroundings, a few divine kings appeared, all of them surging with killing intent, following him as he descended. Hung Long. Not far out, an old monkey appeared, his entire body flickering with golden light. Then, his body erupted, immediately becoming as tall as the heavens, turning into a golden violent ape. 9-headed, do you think I am old, or do you think I can no longer lift the blade? The 6-eared macaque race's old ancestor appeared. The 9-headed bird race's old ancestor sat in the sky dome, scarlet light tearing apart the void. He said coldly, I already said that Chowda killed the innocent, unleashing a great slaughter in his own camp. He must be killed. The old 6-eared macaque was extremely domineering, saying, Who killed the innocent? Are your eyes covered in bird poop? If it was up to me, killing them was good, especially that little bastard named Qi Meng. You are a descendant, right? You should be killed. What did you say? The 9-headed bird race's old ancestor's voice was bone-chilling, his voice rising. Chapter 1238. Monkey, do you think you can cover the sky with one hand? The 9-headed ancestor's eyes were like bloody moons that were reflected in the sky. His face was like an ice age as he looked down with cold, killing intent. Chi. A bloody light flew out from his body like a falling galaxy. However, it was dyed the color of blood as it flew towards Chowda on the ground. It was an earth-shattering scene. This kind of power was too shocking. The void was torn apart and endless scarlet light filled the world like a bloody waterfall. It filled the world and turned into a sea of blood. This was the 9-headed ancestor's blood energy that surged out. He could kill everyone on the ground with a single thought. The 6-eared ancestor lightly shouted. His eyes lit up and surged with golden light. This was a completely different kind of energy. It was masculine and tyrannical like the essence of the sun. With a boom, it dispersed the bloody mist. The face of the ancestor of the nine-headed bird tribe became even colder. He indifferently stared at the golden old violent ape that stood as tall as the sky. 6 ears, your bad habit of meddling in other people's business hasn't changed. Be careful or you'll get your face broken, he said coldly. The current nine-headed ancestor was in human form. His entire body was curled up in bloody mist and suffused with chaotic energy. He sat cross-legged in the void and appeared incomparably terrifying. He had 9 heads, 1 big and 8 small. All of them were placed side by side, making him look extremely strange. Try stretching out a finger. The old 6-eared macaque was quite powerful and tyrannical. He stood there with an indomitable spirit. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of meters tall he was. The golden hair on his body danced in the wind and distorted the void. The energy within an evolver of this level was extremely terrifying. If it truly exploded, it would definitely cause chaos in the world. The nine-headed ancestor's expression was cold. He had been threatened again and again. What did this person think he was? His direct descendant was beaten to death and his heart was crushed by a wild cultivator. Since he had appeared, how could he stop? I just want to kill an insect. Is it worth you standing up for him? 6 ears, if you want to tear apart the relationship between our races, you can try and stop me. Don't regret it. Old nine-headed bird coldly said. Then, his body surged with red mist that covered the sky. Primal chaos surged, preparing to take action. Below, Chu Feng was indignant. This old thing's words were truly unpleasant to hear. He actually called him a bug. Chu Feng really wanted to turn back time and become a big shot. He wanted to slap this old thing to death with a single slap. He secretly prepared the reincarnation soil and a black wooden spear the length of a chopstick. He was ready to attack at any time. He was truly furious. I have never regretted it. What the hell? You beat up the young and the old? If everyone was as shameless as your nine-head clan, the battlefield would have been a mess long ago. Come, let's see how you stretch your claws. The 6-eared macaque race's old ancestor laughed coldly. He was extremely domineering, not caring about the nine-headed bird race's threat at all. He stood there, golden light surging, stirring up the winds and clouds of this world. The nine-headed bird race's ancestor was furious. How many years had it been since someone dared to speak to him in such a rude manner? He couldn't tolerate it. Boom. He sat cross-legged in the void with the height of a normal person. His 9 heads shook at the same time and blossomed with scarlet multicolored light. In a split second, terrifying energy fluctuations tore the sky apart. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled above the battlefield as a rain of blood poured down. That was the wrath of an old ancestor. It manifested with a single thought from him. Everyone couldn't help but be overwhelmed with shock. This kind of phenomenon was too terrifying. Blood-colored lightning interweaved in his vicinity. It was even more terrifying than a heavenly tribulation. The lightning tore the sky apart and even space was being cut apart. If a divine king charged in, they would die. Their bodies and souls would be destroyed. In reality, the attack had already been launched when he had the intention to kill. He could kill a group of saints with a single thought. On the battlefield on the ground, it was unknown how many saints had collapsed. They felt as though their bodies were about to explode, and even their soul light was about to explode. And this was just the shockwaves. They weren't truly attacked. However, the old monkey was already prepared. He sealed the battlefield and confined the world. Golden light surged and cut across the sky, blocking the nine-headed bird's bloody light. Rumble! The nine-headed bird attacked. He sat cross-legged and was very stable. He only stretched out his right hand and slapped downward. His movements were too violent and terrifying. That hand was enlarging and coming over with extreme speed. It crushed the universe as if it wanted to destroy the world. Everyone's scalps went numb, and they felt as though they were about to suffocate. This hand emitted chaotic chi and bloody mist, and became even larger than a mountain. It descended from the sky and was equivalent to suppressing the entire universe. It was too terrifying. Normally speaking, not to mention a saint like Chu Feng, even a divine king would be easily crushed to death by this hand. Rumble. The old monkey moved. The fist imprint on his right hand was grand and golden light soared into the sky, tearing the universe apart. He punched upward and blocked that palm. The collision between the two was an impact of laws. The crushing power of their physical bodies could also destroy the universe. The destructive power was too great. Normally speaking, many living beings in the vicinity would die tragically. Even with the complete suppression of the laws of the Yang realm, at this level, the slightest movement was enough to destroy countless evolvers of lower realms. Fortunately, they had a sense of propriety. They were afraid of the terrifying scene of people being plunged into misery and blood flowing like rivers. They all paid attention to controlling their own strength and order runes. Otherwise, if they really dared to be unrestrained and cause this battlefield to collapse and all living beings to die, they would also suffer great karma. Some people wouldn't allow this. "Monkey, you're meddling in other people's business," the nine-headed bird said coldly. This attack caused his chi and blood to surge and his body to become unstable. He swayed in the air. How many years had it been since he had fought with the six-eared macaque? He was also very wary. After all, they were formidable enemies in the past. Under normal circumstances, he wasn't willing to easily provoke them. This old man is going to interfere. The six-eared macaque race's old ancestor rose into the air. His body was enormous and seemed to be cast from gold as he attacked the nine-headed bird. Rumble. The nine-headed bird race's old ancestor instantly took form, turning into a ferocious bird that covered the sky and covered the earth. Its entire body was scarlet red, and it was just too enormous. It covered the entire sky dome, making all life tremble uncontrollably. Kacha. A great blade appeared in the old six-eared macaque's hands. It was incomparably dazzling, illuminating the heavens. It hacked towards that blood-colored vicious bird. This was the blade of order, not an ordinary weapon. The nine-headed bird was awe-inspiring. He opened his mouth and released bloody radiance. This was, without a doubt, the light of natural laws. He was suppressing and fighting against the opponent he had previously fought to the death with when he was younger. Hong Long. They collided intensely, piercing through the heavens and leaving behind large amounts of chaotic energy. Then, they disappeared together. The two of them entered outer space to fight intensely. Otherwise, no matter how much they restrained themselves, they might still create a terrifying scene of corpses piling up like mountains and blood gushing out. The other creatures wouldn't be able to endure it. Soon after, scarlet feathers fell, carrying blood with them. Then, they were burned. The nine-headed bird race's old ancestor roared angrily, shaking many people until their souls were about to explode. Fortunately, the entire battlefield was covered in a barrier of light, surrounding it and blocking the shockwaves from outer space. Right now, forget about others, even the divine kings shivered inwardly. They all sighed. The difference was too great. Even if they were close to that level of confrontation, they would still immediately wither away. Chi. A streak of scarlet multicolored light tore through the heavens. That type of terrifying radiance burned outer space. The entire heavens seemed to have been dyed in blood. Bloody light overflowed into the heavens. The two clashed. The nine-headed bird race's old ancestor was injured. He was unable to restrain his anger. He immediately left the battlefield and fled into the distance. Nine-headed, in the future, you should have some face. Don't get involved in the younger generation's dispute. Otherwise, you will die a violent death sooner or later, moreover under the hands of the younger generation. The six-eared macaque's old ancestor spoke. His voice was like thunder as it rang outwards. Six-eared, there will be a time for you to face your tribulation. The nine-headed bird race's voice was cold. He slaughtered his way back, revealing his original body to fight against the monkey in outer space. Even though they were separated by an endless distance, a few terrifying scenes could still be seen. Two creatures, one golden, one blood-red, tangled fiercely and collided intensely. In the end, the nine-headed bird flew out in reverse. Many of his scarlet feathers were hacked off by the golden violent ape's blade of order. Angry cries shook the heavens. Blood flowed. He was seriously injured once again. There were 9 divine rings behind the nine-headed bird's head. They were all supported by natural laws. When dealing with others, they could directly suppress and destroy everything. However, when he encountered the old monkey, he was a bit powerless. The 9 divine rings shook together, but they only swept off some golden monkey fur. The old monkey grimaced in pain, but his muscles and bones weren't injured. Hong Long. The old monkey's 6 ears vibrated at the same time. He listened to the voice of his opponent's soul and sensed his opponent's thoughts. He began to predict the enemy's movements and became increasingly terrifying. Golden light spat out from his mouth, and order appeared in his eyes. It was as if he was possessed by a warlord. With a pring sound, the nine-headed bird race's old ancestor was struck by the violent ape's large golden hand. He directly tumbled outwards and fell out of the heavens. Chi! Bloody light flickered. The nine-headed bird appeared above the saint camp. He returned to his human form and wore a feathered robe. His hair was disheveled, and he was in a somewhat sorry state. His face was ashen. He had been defeated in the first exchange. If they continued fighting, there might be a chance to turn things around. However, at their level, as long as they didn't fight to the death, victory or defeat had been decided. It was time to stop. Monkey, you're good. Today you fought for an ant. In the future, I'll make you feel the pressure of the universe. Your 6-eared monkey race might not be able to bear it. Isn't it just the 11th forbidden zone? This old master will wait. The old monkey's eyes flickered with golden light. He also landed on the battlefield and fought back. On the ground, Chu Feng was asking Mi Tian what realm this old ancestor was at. In fact, he also wanted to know how deep the nine-headed bird race's old ancestor's cultivation was. Being called an insect by someone today made him very angry. He wanted to roast the nine-headed bird race's old ancestor in the future. Heavenly Venerate, Mi Tian informed with a serious expression. Chu Feng was surprised. Not a supreme being, but just a heavenly venerate? This surprised him a little. What's with that look? What do you mean? The old monkey saw his expression and immediately became unhappy, secretly communicating with him. In this world, what level of being do you think is the most free and unfettered? Normally speaking, it's a small number of heavenly venerates. Almost all supreme beings were in a dying state, and there were very few who were normal. All of them were extremely old, their bodies withered, and their vitality declined. In fact, most heavenly venerates were the same. Many of them were extremely old, and only a small number of them were still at the peak of their lives, able to act recklessly. As a result, they had become the high-end threat that caused the various races the most headache. Mi Tian sighed. In fact, heavenly venerates rarely appear. In most cases, a peak god-king can roam the world and have great authority. There was no doubt that there was a supreme being in the 6-eared monkey race. However, it really wasn't suitable for them to appear unless their race was in a life-or-death situation. The nine-headed bird race's old ancestor glanced at Chu Feng, feeling very unwilling. Even though he called Chowda an insect, he was still a little surprised and even a little fearful, afraid that he would rise up in the future. This was because this young man was already a great saint, which was too shocking. If this kind of being successfully broke through and became a god-king one day and incarnated into a heavenly venerate, even he would be afraid. Everyone knew that a great saint was invincible in the same realm. The nine-headed bird race's old ancestor had no choice but to be afraid, which was why he didn't hesitate to bully the weak and kill Chowda today. Unfortunately, the old monkey directly appeared and interfered, not giving him a chance. "Young man, I'll give you a chance. Go to my race and ask for forgiveness. I swear to let bygones be bygones and even accept you as my disciple." No one expected the nine-headed bird to say such a thing at the last moment. Everyone's jaws dropped in shock. The change in style was too great. His tone actually softened. At this level, normally, he would still keep his promises. Since he said this, then he was giving Chowda a chance to not kill him. However, how could Chu Feng bow his head? The old monkey stood up for him and shed all pretense of cordiality with the other party. How could he submit to the nine-headed bird race? That was why he directly ignored him. It was useless to say too many harsh words now. He didn't have the strength to do so. He only turned around, showing the back of his head to the nine-headed bird race's old ancestor. Everyone revealed strange expressions. "Very good, looking down on my nine-headed bird race like this. Chowda, you really are a good person. You have character, heh?" The nine-headed bird race's old ancestor was incomparably cold. "In the future, whoever brings Chowda to my race, I'll accept him as my last disciple," the nine-headed bird race's old ancestor said coldly. "Is this interesting? Your race is too shameless. Cram!" The six-eared macaque race's old ancestor shouted. The nine-headed bird suddenly turned around. His entire body was covered in scarlet light, and his face was filled with endless killing intent. With a roar, he rushed over. Rumble! With one final blow, the nine-headed bird race's old ancestor fled, leaving behind some blood-stained feathers that burned in the void. The six-eared macaque race's old ancestor's body also swayed as a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. "Senior!" Chu Feng hurriedly rushed forward. Mi Tian and the others were also very nervous, calling out, "Old ancestor!" "It's fine." The old monkey waved his hand. Then, he looked at Chu Feng and said, "I look forward to your rise. I hope you can stand shoulder to shoulder with Li Su and become Black Hand Chow. Don't be a flash in the pan, otherwise, I will have offended the nine-headed bird race today, which will bring me great trouble." He seemed quite honest, directly stating that he valued Chowda's potential. Mi Tian was speechless. He knew that his old ancestor was indeed honest when he was young, but as he grew older, his heart became a bit darker. However, he believed that the old ancestor had no malicious intent towards Chowda. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.